Will you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome everyone. It's really kind of nice to see some bodies in this place and to be with you all. Thank you all for coming. Looking forward to hearing from everyone. I'll take the roll call. Please note that all board members are present. And I need an adoption to approve the agenda, a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Merkley and seconded by Dr. Fernando. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Report of action taken in closed session. There was no action taken in closed session, so we're going to move right along to our student board members. Mrs. Wells, you're going to read them tonight for Nadia and for Chloe. Thank you.
Good evening. This is the student board report for March 8th, 2021. Glendora High School Homecoming Reveal. ASB recently held a drive-up homecoming reveal. Congratulations to our homecoming queen, Georgia Riggs, and homecoming king, Tyler Quinan. National Merit Scholarship finalists. Congratulations to National Merit Scholarship finalists Brandon Yee and Lauren Mraz. GHS is so proud of the hard work they have put in to achieve this incredible honor. Athletic competition begins. New guidelines were released by LA County Department of Public Health and the State Department of Public Health, allowing for competition to take place for many of our sports. Thus far, cross country and water polo have had their first games of the season, with more sports beginning competition this week. Sandberg Middle School. Activities, February 2nd, Sandberg held another Among Us game night with over 100 participants. Students and staff look forward to this event. One more will be planned for the spring. Free Valentine grams were available February 3rd through the 14th. This was a great way for students to connect with their friends. We'll put the art in Spartan with a sketch night for all Spartans and their families. There will be 8 theme rooms run by ASB members. Sign-ups begin March 3rd for the event on March 9th. AVID applications for grades 7 through 9 were due March 1st. The AVID classes have had and are scheduled to have several interesting discussions with the GHS AVID program, including one senior who talked about her own process applying to her dream colleges and even asked the students to participate in her senior research project. The Godfriends Foundation. Sandberg partnered with the Godfriends Foundation for 2 weeks beginning February 15th to raise funds to support the students of the Sanis village in Ghana. It was a huge success and a wonderful learning experience. Cullen Elementary School. Return to campus. At Cullen, we have had special ed, transitional kindergarten, first grade, and now second grade students return to school. Students and staff are excited to be meeting in person again, and even if it is half of the class, some families choose to stay on distance learning and are doing so keeping the same teacher. The numbers attending will continue to increase as we bring back each grade, as there are a few who are waiting for the entire family to return. Thus far, things are going well, lots of excited and happy kids. It is also exciting to see how much students have learned with distance learning. Sellers Elementary School returned to campus on March 4th. Second grade students returned to campus in the afternoon. Third grade students are scheduled to come back on March 18th. Parent-teacher conferences are the week of March 8th to the 12th. Library book pickup is every Wednesday in the drive-thru, and many students have been picking up books. The Godfriends Foundation, Sandberg, this is a copy. Let's move on to Stanton. Stanton Activities. In the past few weeks, we held our family VAPA drawing night, I Heart College Day with virtual tours, PTA membership drive, and our Thanks and Giving Bakery. This week, we are celebrating Read Across America Week virtually with Spirit Days, guest readers, and a special Spirit Assembly with our Reader's Oath. Progress and development. Stanton had 9 teachers receive the Rotary Grant last month. We are all welcoming students back on campus and loving it. Teachers are completing report cards and getting ready for conference. That's it.
Thanks so much. It's always great to hear what's happening out there. We're going to move on to superintendent's report. Dr. De Leon.
Thank you, President Borg, members of our Board of Trustees, and members of our staff and community who are out here with us tonight. I am going to yield my time tonight to a special presentation, but before I do that, I do want to mention I'm going to also have a presentation after our council members present of a new representative from Assemblywoman Blanca Rubio's office is here tonight as well. But before I do that, I do want to announce, and I'm so excited about this, that as mentioned earlier, our athletic guidelines have changed. And as early as this Thursday, indoor sports like basketball will be practicing. So I think that deserves a big round of applause that we are getting back to athletics as a district, which is huge for our kids. So we're really happy that that has happened. And I know we will have a presentation and much more on that at our next board meeting. And also we have upcoming competitions for football. We've already had water polo. And the great piece about that is we're very proud as a district because we have our own testing center that we are able to provide all of the required testing for our students who are in, our student athletes who are in competitive sports, contact sports. So we're really happy about that. And then just one more quick note. I am so proud and thrilled and want to thank our entire business services, ed services, and of course our district nurse, Sonia Delaquila, who put together our own vaccination point of dispensing. We are one of 3 districts in the entire county that was approved to do their own vaccinating. And we were able to serve our first 100 employees this past Friday and had lots of good news coverage there. And we were just approved for 200 more employees for this week. So really happy, and again, many, many thanks. Our health clerks were there, Nurse Sonia, everybody who helped to set up all the safety equipment, everything that was purchased, just the planning. There was so much planning and so much to that application process. So hats off to Sonia and her entire team and the hard work. I mean, she was literally on phone calls with the Department of Public Health at 11 o'clock at night, some nights, trying to get that application, and we were able to do it. So really pleased to be able to provide that service for our employees, and hopefully if they keep us open at some point, we'll be able to do that for our community as well, because that's what our hope would be. So anyway, really excited about that. So without further ado, though, at this point, I would like to introduce and call up council members. There, Gary Boyer, and oh, there he is, Mendel Thompson. Come on up.
Need I say more?
You just
Go for it.
Everyone, council member Mendel Thompson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As all of you know, we were the ones that asked to have the city and district look at the MOUs, and we were anxious to get that going. Little did we know that it would move as fast as it has, and so we're here just to simply say thank you. Thank you for the partnership that is being formed. Thank you to you and your team, the task force that you have. And I want to say thank you to the city task force. They've already met once, and
yes.
I understand they wouldn't allow Gary and I to attend because, well, there's a lot of reasons for that. But
I'm smiling behind.
But we are just so pleased that the 2 groups have already met. There's meetings that are planned. Some good stuff came out of that. and I think that it's going to be a win-win for everyone. So we're just here to just say thank you for moving that along as quickly as you have, and we're thinking that it's going to take about a year, but maybe it'll take a little less than a year to get everything worked out. And so thank you for the good job that you've all done, and we're just here to say thank you. So Gary?
Thank you so much.
And again, ditto everything Mendel said. The city of Glendora, the community, and the school district has had a great partnership forever, as long as I've lived here in town, and it's worked. It's one of those things that's just always worked. But moving forward, it's important. I understand some of these agreements go back to the 1960s. Okay, Mendel was only like 50 at that time. But it's just important moving forward. We understand how cash-strapped the school district is. The funding out of Sacramento is not fair to a lot of school districts, and Glendora schools is one of them. When I'm in Sacramento talking to our legislatures, I always talk about the fact that we seem to punish success. And it's not right, but that's the hand we've been drawn. I look at things as though, we talk in some of these meetings about the schools pay for certain things and the city pays for certain things. And the bottom line is, it's all taxpayer money. It's all of our neighbors, our friends and neighbors that are paying for this, and us. And so we just need to make it work and make things work for what's best for the kids of this community. So we look forward to moving that forward, and we're happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Board members, Mrs. Merkley, any questions? No?
No.
Go ahead, Mrs. Reuter.
I don't have any questions, but I do appreciate you're both coming here tonight. There had been a little bit of a sort of an elephant in the corner a couple of weeks ago where, we had some tensions over some field use in the city, community members that were angry, that were calling us and calling you all, and reasonably so, of course. When you have a concern, we're definitely the people that you want to come to talk to. But I do appreciate your coming here tonight. I appreciate your acknowledging the staff at both the city and the school district that have made this a priority and are working really hard to one more time that we don't want to let a good crisis go to waste with COVID. It brought this forward into the light and an opportunity for us to do things, as you suggest, Mr. Boyer, that should have been done over the years as far as MOUs and facilities usage. So I can speak for myself that the relationship between the city and the school district is what makes Glendora the kind of community that it is. We can't really do one successfully without the other. So I appreciate your coming here tonight to support us, and we're happy to be supporting you all as well. So thank you. I appreciate seeing you both.
Mr. Ellenson?
Yeah, I'll just add that I'm glad we're all working on it and making it a priority on both sides. Gary and I have talked about it a couple of times when we both tried to ask questions to city staff or school district staff about what's the rule here, and it was sort of like, well, I don't know. Like, there was a contract, but it's expired, and we agreed to this one time, we agreed to this. So I'm just glad the city and schools both prioritize making it happen now and just coming together, putting our heads together. What do we want to accomplish, and how do we make the agreements reflect that? So I think it'll be soon that we accomplish this task, but very timely now.
And honestly, Corey, just to acknowledge the fact that you and Judy Nelson started this conversation a couple of years ago.
Yep.
You recognize the fact that we had these issues, and unfortunately, we had a little problem last year that put everything on hold. But we appreciate the fact that this started at that time, and we're finally getting around to it. So thank you.
Dr. Fernando? Nothing? Well, I just would echo Mrs. Reuter's sentiments, and just to add to it, the kids that you serve through Parks and Rec and all of the other, and the library, are our kids too. So it's the same families that we're all serving. So it's important to work together. I'm thrilled that we can, and we both have great teams. I mean, Adam and Mr. Our superintendent of business, assistant super of business, they make a great team. They're both go-getters. They have plans. I bet you're going to see it before a year. So
Yeah,
thank you both for
it will
coming.
be.
Dr. De Leon, anything more?
Yes, I just wanted to thank you gentlemen for coming tonight. I've had the pleasure of meeting both of you in person, and it was absolutely delightful. And I do thank you for your support, and we do want a strong relationship between the district and the city. And I can tell you that the city's team has been incredible, being led by Adam Raymond. Lots of help from Chief Egan, also John Aguirre, Annie Warner, have been wonderful. You know, we've had a partnership all year with the Teen Center. It's been great. So I just want to thank you again, and we do want to get this done. We want to have an MOU and really collaborate, and it will cover more than just the fields. We have crossing guards, the SRO, all kinds of things that we do together because, like you said, Trustee Reuter, we have had a relationship for many, many years, and we can't work without the city, and so we work together, and I do appreciate your leadership and help in getting this together, and we'll get it going. Mr. Weinstein is a go-getter too, and he'll make sure that we do get this together. So thank you so much for coming tonight.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
For the
Okay.
good or the bad, you know we have each other's phone numbers, so the texting flies, yeah. Okay, staff presentations.
Oh, wait, I
and-
do have the Assemblywoman's representative is
sorry.
here.
Yes, yes,
Hold on 1 second. At this time, if Cameron Griffin could come forward. Hello, Mr. Griffin. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the new representative for Assemblywoman Blanca Rubio from the 48th District. Mr.
Yeah.
Griffin.
Thank you so much. And thank you guys all for having me. I just wanted to come here to put a face to the name. If you guys ever see me at meetings or in your emails,
Could you pull your mask down so I can actually see your face?
yeah.
There you go.
But other than that, yeah, if you guys need anything at all, please reach out to me. I will send you guys an email so you have my information. I know Taylor used to cover this area, but I'll be taking over for Taylor. So any questions at all, just please reach out. But that was it. Thank you guys so much.
Congratulations, and thank you for
Congratulations.
coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. I don't. I think that's it for my report tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Then we'll move on to staff presentations with Whitcomb High School Model Continuation High School Designation. Dr. De Leon.
Well, this one makes me just want to jump for joy. I am, having been a continuation high school, break it down for the continuation high school people in this room. So having been one in my time, I can tell you, without a doubt, that it takes a certain kind of people to do the kind of work that's done at Whitcomb High School. They are able to reach kids, give them the care and support that they need to turn their lives around. It is a school of second chances, and it is a school where students who sometimes maybe have lost confidence regain that confidence and go on to reach their fullest potential. And I cannot tell you what it means to this district to be able to honor you as a 2021 Model Continuation High School. Come on up, Whitcomb High School, led by Principal Ron LaTurner. Woo!
Us four, that's it.
Hey, small but mighty.
We're the entire staff.
Why don't you introduce me,
Yes,
Rob?
please.
Okay, first of all, Board of Education, thank you for having us here tonight. It's a great honor for me to introduce three of my fine folks. With us tonight, we have our English teacher, Mr. Ralph Love.
Hi.
And then we've got our yearbook teacher, we've got electives, we got credit recovery, got just about a little everything, and she's been there for a while now. This is Claire Interdicia. Ralph's been here 3 years, right? This is
Yeah.
correct? Okay. And then we have our librarian, who's been around the community and been at Whitcomb for a long time, Linda Shook.
Yay, wonderful.
And for me, I would just like to say, again, what a great honor to recognize Whitcomb for all the hard work that everybody puts in. You were right when you said or Dr. Gideon, when you said it takes a special group. I love this group that I work with. The teachers are great. The kids are great. You know, we've got it down, and we just keep plugging along. And we do like to give those kids a second chance. We do like to provide them opportunities that when they feel defeated, we can pump them up and make them feel good about themselves. And you know, they go on and live some very successful lives. So it's a great honor. Thank you for having us here tonight. Greatly appreciated.
I would just like to say that coming on your campus, you can feel the energy. You can feel it when you walk up there. So it's a feeling that's so necessary, and like you said, for all the students, but especially at Whitcomb. We appreciate all you do. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can I also quickly mention one other thing? For those of you in the audience who don't know what the process for Model Continuation High School is, I think it's really important. This is no joke. You have a very long application to fill out. You have to prove through your data, your practices, procedures, protocols, and everything that you do that you are doing everything possible to help the children at that school, and that you are giving a true alternative education program, meaning that you are thinking outside of the box. A team from the state of continuation education, educators come to the site, interview students and staff, and make a determination on whether they will recommend you or not. And I can tell you that having been through that process, it is not an easy process. There are many schools that try over and over and over, and they do not become model continuation high schools. So it is a difficult, very robust process. I happened to be there for the report out from the visiting team. And I have to tell you, they had the most amazing things to say about Of course, we knew that. They weren't telling us anything we didn't know, but it was great to hear it from people from the outside, to recognize you as providing the quality education that is provided at Whitcomb, along with the care, which is important. So thank you so much. I just wanted the public to know what goes into it. It's great. Thank you
And
so much.
we're going to ask you to stay up here because we're going to get a photo. So if you,
Real quick,
yeah,
if I could just
sure,
add one more thing,
of
because
course.
hearing you say that, Dr. Leon, I'd like to give a shout out to the folks that aren't directly involved every day at Whitcomb. This year, what made it so extraordinary is normally you have a month or 2 months to put together your groups. Because of the time frame, we had 5 days to put together some groups. The easiest group to put together is your teachers. But you had to have student groups, you had to have community groups, you have to have parent groups. And trying to get all those groups coordinated and get them all there on one night. And I called 15 parents hoping to get 5, all 15 showed up. I contacted 11 community members, all 11 showed up. And they wanted to be there. You know, so we have an incredible PTA. And they said, please, don't bring your PTA after we've seen the other groups. We know what you guys are. And then the student group, I contacted 14 kids, all 14 showed up. So it just goes to show that it's a group effort, and we greatly appreciate it. Now, you can take our picture.
Can we just stand up behind him? Like, could we, board members, stand up?
Should we stand behind them here, maybe?
Yeah, come on up here, guys. Okay.
Sorry, just for a photo op moment, could we, everybody just shuffle this way so that everybody feels in the background?
Go ahead, Mrs. Nelson.
Ms. Borg asked me to talk about Whitcomb PTSA because I've been involved there since Becky Summers was the principal. And it is an amazing group. We say that PTA presidents don't die, they just go to Whitcomb. So when you get to Whitcomb and you look at the PTSA that's there, at the parents that are represented, almost all of us have been president at somewhere else at least one time. So it is a good, strong group of women. We have had men. And the interesting thing is now that our PTA president is actually a graduate of Whitcomb, which I think is so amazing that she could come back. And I love Whitcomb. I just happened to get on there as a fluke, and I have enjoyed my time and so, so grateful. I was worried when Becky was leaving because I think I was president at the time, and I was like, oh man, who could replace her? But Ron has done a great job. You did well. Good job. You can stay. But anyway, it's been great. I just really say congratulations to the whole team. It's just amazing.
Thank you, Mrs. Merkley.
Can I say something real quick?
Of course.
Okay. I think that you, Mr. Letourneau, you were just talking about all the parent groups and community groups and kids groups, and that's a direct reflection of you get back what you're putting out there. Every time Ms. Borg mentioned it, I go onto that campus. You do get a special energy from all the teachers, all the staff members, everybody there. I've really missed the honor roll breakfasts this year, and the Whitcomb graduation is one of the highlights of my year, the enthusiasm and everything. So this is a very hard worked for, very well-deserved recognition, and I just want to say congratulations to everybody that's here, but to everybody, all the teachers, all the staff members, everybody at Whitcomb. It's a really special place. Congratulations.
Mr. Ellenson, any comments?
Just echo the congratulations of my colleagues. I know how hard it is to put together what you have to submit to be recognized as a model continuation high school. We're very proud of our alternative high school here in Glendora and everything you've done to make it that way. Thank you for giving us something to be so proud of here in the district. Thank you.
Dr. Fernando?
I think it's really good that they call it a model, because I think sometimes when you have the kinds of kids that go to Whitcomb, they don't view themselves as models. But I think the environment that you're creating for them shows that then there's an opportunity for success, an opportunity for advancement, an opportunity to see themselves through a different lens. So thank you for creating that environment for our students, that no matter how the world may view them, that you view them differently. So congratulations.
Okay. Thank you so much. Here we go on to the plan for secondary return to in-person instruction. Dr. De Leon.
Yes, at this time I would like to turn on my mic. At this time, I would like to introduce Dr. Virginia Kelson, who will introduce our secondary principals who are going to do this amazing plan.
Thank you, Dr. De Leon, Board of Trustees, esteemed colleagues, and community members. This evening, I'd like to invite our middle and high school principals to the podium. That is Mr. Eric Osborne, Dr. Jennifer Prince, Mr. Matt Brummett, and once again, Mr. Ron Letourneau. So I will turn it over first to middle school and then to high school, and then we'll all be here for comments and questions from the trustees.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys so much for having us. We're really excited to present our plan to you tonight. And we are going to start with middle school. So we'll look at where we've been and where we're going. So phase one, we reopened February 18th. It was a learning lab cohort. They're on campus from 8:15 to 12:25. They are our most in-need students who are invited back. At Goddard, that was 8 students with 2 teachers. And at Sandberg, he had 2 cohorts at Sandberg.
With 15 students and 7 staff members. And as Dr. Prince mentioned, this is a phased approach under the current guidelines. And so we've been working under some very restrictive guidelines at the secondary level. We can't currently have passing periods. Students can only remain in 1 cohort, and we have a small cohort size. So our phase 2, which launched on March 1st, just a couple weeks ago, we were calling the Learning Lab, and that's with substitute teachers, where our most at-need students, we call them at-promise students, We worked with our staff to identify students who needed academic support, social emotional support. These are students who might not have been successful with attending school on a regular basis. And we created a prioritized list and invited them back onto campus from 8:15 to 12:30. As you can see from the slide, at Goddard, they had 5 cohorts of students. And at Sandberg, we had 6 cohorts of students. And so far, it's been working incredibly well. It's been a transition for our students and our staff, but it's been really great having students on campus, hearing the laughter, the joking around. The students have really missed one another, and our staff has really missed our students. In addition to that, we launched on March 1st an after-school program to support our students who are learning English as a second language, so our ELLs. And so at Goddard, they had 1 cohort of students after school, and over at Sandberg, we had 2 cohorts.
And one of the great things, too, with this phase 2 is it really gave us some experience and knowledge before we went on a broader scale. Being able to really work with 5, 6 small cohorts at where are we going to drop them off? How are we going to do the health screening? How are we going to do pickups to make sure we had everything honed in? It went beautifully, and we've even had some other districts come visit us and ask for some resources for that. So now we know we're ready for the next one. The other exciting part was our athletics that restarted today. So we had some in second quarter, but more limitations. Now, though, we had racket sports, golf, and yoga all start at Goddard today. It was really exciting. And Sandberg start tomorrow.
Yep. So as we mentioned, we've been working under some very challenging restrictions from the LA County Department of Public Health. And so as we've been planning, we've had to not only work under the current guidelines, but we've also had to plan for when those guidelines become less restrictive for our students. And so that's why we have a phased return to students. So, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but since you're saying that, before you do present, I want you to know I did get an email from Dr. Gilchek from the Department of Public Health. He says, quote, "We will have a draft of our new secondary guidance available to see tomorrow for our superintendent." So you are getting new guidance, just so you know. It's coming tomorrow.
We are used to pivoting. We got it.
Yeah, one thing we've learned is to remain flexible in our planning.
Yes.
Which has been good to innovate, but also a sense of frustration because we're always changing plans. And I'm sure that's a frustration for our students and our families as well. So in that, under our current guidelines, our current phase 3, we would plan for April 8th. Obviously, with this new news, Dr. DeLeon, that these plans could change rapidly. On March 18th, our middle school teachers will be reporting back to campus in preparation for a phase 3 or possibly a phase 4 reopening. So currently our teachers, most of them have been working at home. And so they're going to be coming back on campus, preparing their classrooms, setting up all their technology, getting used to our health screening process, all of that in preparation for the return of middle school students. Sure.
So the next one, what we're looking at for if our parameters stay the same, if the guidelines don't allow for passing periods and continue to have the small cohort size that doesn't allow a change of classes, we're doing what's called care time, the connect and re-engage for students. So students would be allowed to come on campus from 101 to 110 is our health screening time, then 110 to 2:30 in their cohorts A or B. And part of that time would be for academic support, so making sure they have their homework done, that they've checked areas for missing assignments, that they know how to use their agenda, and they have a checklist for things to do that night. So making sure they're ready. But the other part is really, and I'm going to quote Dr. Bonner on this, making them fall in love with school again. So making them love coming to Goddard and Sandberg and enjoy what they're doing and connect with their classmates and their teachers.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about this plan in particular is our students that are currently on campus in their cohorts in the morning, they would be able to have lunch with us because it's a small group of students, and then they would be able to stay in the afternoon for that additional support.
Oh, that's great.
So it's a great plan. Now, if the restrictions lessen, we would be moving to our phase 4, which is a full hybrid reopening. Obviously, this is dependent on the ability to do passing periods at secondary level and to have students in more than one group or cohort with 50% capacity. Our plan would be middle school students would return on a hybrid or a Monday, Tuesday, A, and a B, Thursday, Friday schedule from 8:25 to 12:21, 2 days a week. We would like to send out a parent survey to get feedback from our families to see if they're comfortable with their student to return or not, so we could properly plan those cohorts. And so Dr. Prince and I were actually discussing that today, as well as currently working on cohorting our students and aligning them to their elementary siblings if they have them.
All right.
So you can see the cohort model, and this is just a good visual. This is Dr. Summers had put it together in our reopening plan. So there is obviously still the option in phase 4 for parents who are not comfortable, who are unable logistically to bring their kids to stay in full distance learning. And then you would also have the hybrid where they could come for the A or B model as well.
Love it.
Any questions for middle school before we turn it over to our high school counterparts?
We can always be open at the end for whole group too. We promise not to leave.
This was just one short question. The learning labs, is that every day but Wednesday
Yes.
that they come? Great. This is exciting. Thank you for all the work. I know that you have it to keep changing, and it has to be so frustrating, as you said, but you're doing great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Our students deserve it.
Dr. Fernando?
Not right now.
Okay.
So with the Learning Lab, the 5 cohorts at Goddard and the 6 that are at Sandberg, I suspect that there are more than, say, 58 or 48 students that would like to be on campus. And I know that the current guidelines allow us to be up to 25% of our population are able to return to campus. What's limiting us from being able to do that right now?
Yeah, so our current cohort guidelines, so although we could bring back 25%, our current group is only 14 students to 2 adults. So we can only have 14 students per group. So right now we started off small to kind of, like Dr. Prince said, to kind of figure out the logistics. And over the course of the next couple of weeks, we're planning on inviting more students to join those cohorts until we reach a maximum of about 80 students per site. In addition to that, if we could get additional subs to monitor those learning labs, then we'd be able to invite more students back.
I guess, oh, sorry.
To clarify, we have been approved for additional subs. It has been a touch difficult to find subs who are comfortable in coming in person with the cohort. So we're continuing to work on that, and we hope to be recruiting more.
Great, that's what I was sort of trying to get to. Now, these kids that are in there now are with their cohort all day long, but they're not all in the same classes. You're gonna have 12 kids who are likely in multiple different classes. So can you explain to our viewing public how they handle their day that way?
Yeah, so it's a learning lab model. They have their Chromebooks with them. They are Zooming into those teaching classes, but they have a sub there to support it. So for example, we've had numerous times where the sub is in the classroom, the teacher sends a quick text message, hey, I think Johnny is having some tech issues. Sub's able to walk right over, deal with the tech issues, help them, support them, or so-and-so forgot their science notebook. They call the office real quick, we run it over, and the sub hands it to them. They also, for PE, because you can imagine the difficulty of Mr. Osborne trying to take a math test while I'm doing a science lab, and Mr. Ellenson is doing some jumping jacks for PE. It can be a little distracting. So we do have our noon aides that have been working with our kids. They leave the room and do PE at a close by outdoor area. And then they come back in, same with our students who are in band or orchestra. They'll kind of exit right outside, do their music, and come right back in.
Okay, thank you very much. That's helpful to understand.
Mr. Ellenson?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Dr. De Leon has a couple comments.
I was going to do it at the very end of the presentation.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I just want to thank you. I know you're suffering from some of the same things we have been going through. You know, you plan and get it all nailed down, supposedly, until you have to pull the nails out and redo it. That's been our life, too, with the big picture. So we understand. And we support you all the way. Thank you for getting our kids back. And it's a start. That's what I keep saying. It's a start. I'm thrilled. It's going well at the elementary. I'm sure it's going to go well at the middle school as well. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yay, thank you.
Mr. Brummett.
Matt Brummett, soon to be Dr. Brummett
Oh.
this Friday.
Hopefully.
Oh, you're going to pass your defense.
The pressure's on now.
Pressure is on. It's out there. Well, good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. De Leon. Really excited to be here, standing here full of hope and optimism. Things are going in the right direction, and a lot of good things are happening. As my colleagues right before me had shared, we're bound by the Department of Public Health on what we can and can't do. And the update from Dr. De Leon in the middle of this meeting just a few minutes ago, things are changing. And we're hopeful that, again, restrictions are going to be a little bit looser, and we can continue to move things forward towards a full reopening. So again, a step in the right direction, and we're really excited to share our plans at the high school level with you this evening and the community as well. So currently at GHS, and actually before I even jump into this too much, these plans go back to the summer. When we talk about the LRCs that were in place all summer long, our teachers giving their time, our staff members giving their time to try to figure out how to get our kids back as fast as possible within the parameters. We're finally here in March because the Department of Health, is putting us in a position where we can do this now. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the fact that this has been in the works for a long time. So this is not new for us. This is something that we've met on a number of times and are excited to implement. And so going back, to phase one, what we called it in October, and we brought back some of our highest need students on campus. And it was a special day for us. It was a small win. And then the spike happened, and then kids went back home. And then February 18th, they were back, and smiles were on our faces again as more kids were on our campus. Like my colleagues before me at the middle school level, we've begun distance learning labs March 4th last week, and those are up and running. After school EL Academy for our English language learners to get some extra support during this time has been just started and has been off to a great start as kids look to earn some support after school. Ongoing SPED assessments and services on campus in person and some online, but we've been able to get kids on campus for those things as well. And then Mr. Llewellyn, our fantastic athletic director, you've heard from him a number of times this year, has put us in a position along with his coaching staff and our great community to be able to compete, which has been wonderful to see. And just seeing the competition, the first competition on our campus in nearly a year was water polo against Yucaipa High School this past week. Both varsity teams won. Again, people were wearing masks like they should be. They were socially distanced, and they were just happy to see their kids play. And it was that touch of normalcy that we've been craving. And we're going in the right directions with sports as well. Our kids have been conditioning since October, so to finally get that competition and stop competing against each other was really nice. Yeah. And our arts groups, some of our performing arts groups have been practicing since October and have continued to do so, and are just doing a fantastic job. It's so great to hear the music after school, after a long days of meetings, to just hear that traditional music that Glendora High School and our students provide is just great. So that's where we are currently. And what we've done is we've created a number of scenarios to be prepared for whatever the Department of Public Health might give us. And currently, as you heard earlier, the Department of Public Health, LA County, has said to get into hybrid, you must be in the red tier for 2 weeks. And we're about to get there as we approach the red tier. So we're preparing for a hybrid return. But they've also said once hybrid comes, you're looking at potentially 25% cap of students on your campus at one time, maybe 50, we'll see, but no passing periods. And so we've had to create plans for those scenarios because we have to be prepared to get our kids on campus as fast as we possibly can, which is what we want. But what we're most hopeful for is what I'll share in just a few minutes, which is our 50% hybrid plan, which is the more, I guess there's really no such thing as a traditional hybrid plan, but I think the most conducive to the continuity of learning and the best possible experience for our kids. But I think we'd be missing an opportunity if we didn't prepare to get our kids back on campus in some capacity with multiple scenarios. So what we're gonna have is similar to the middle schools as far as getting our teachers back onto campus March 18th for those who aren't already on campus, to reacquaint them with being on campus, with the Wi-Fi upgrades, with the technology that's at their disposal in the classrooms, webcams, you name it, we'll be getting ready for it. And what we plan to do if there is no passing periods allowed is what we're gonna call tartan tutorial. And it will be about an hour and a half, close to an hour and a half in the afternoons, Again, this will only be if we do not have passing periods that we're allowed to use. Students would be socially distanced in small group cohorts, again, depending on the size of the capacity that's allowable. And I'll show you a visual in just a second to give you a clear picture. Some students, we could have students on campus 1 day a week, or we could have them on campus 2 days a week in this particular model. And again, in these tutorials, what they would have the opportunity to do is participate in academic support activities, enrichment activities, some type of review, especially with different types of testing that are coming up as we approach the end of the school year, and any type of supplementary instruction to account for any potential learning loss and to limit any type of impact from distance learning. And so what that looks like, if we have a 25% capacity, students will be assigned either a group A, B, C, or D to come in the afternoons. Everybody would learn online in the morning, and they, depending on which group that you were assigned to, you would come 1 day a week. Now you'll notice that there is a cohort O, and that would be our online cohort for the families that decided they would choose to stay online if they were not comfortable with their student coming back to be in person in this scenario. So with our webcams, we'd have the opportunity for students to access Tartan tutorial from home if they opted to stay home. If we had 50% with no passing periods, it'd be a very similar model, except students would be able to access campus in person 2 days a week. Again, no passing periods, so we'd be limited to the afternoon time where they'd get the extra support, get the review sessions. Again, this would also be an opportunity with our wonderful counseling staff to check in on students who may be needing that extra support as well. So knowing that they'll be on campus and those students will be on campus, the opportunity to really support our students in the mental health areas as well. And again, when you start to see letters like A, B, and O, and you start talking about medical stuff, you start thinking blood type. That's my dad joke for the night. But the online is going to be the O group, and the A and B will be divided up 50-50. So that's what we're looking at. We're hopeful with Dr. DeLeon's message she got tonight with new guidelines tomorrow. We don't know what they're going to say, but we really sure hope that they allow for passing periods, and we can hopefully get a 50% model, which I'm going to talk about right now. Again, the LA County Department of Public Health would need to come out and allow for this to happen. We're at the mercy of the guidelines they set forth and the health orders they set forth. Once this is allowable, we will do it beginning April 8th, as soon as April 8th. Prior to that, we talk about our teachers coming back March 18th, but how are our families going to learn more about what we're going to offer aside from this evening? Well, we're going to provide lots of information through correspondence, through parent information nights, webinars, et cetera, to give our parents the most clear picture of what this will look like, the parameters and the protocols we have in place to keep our kids and staff safe, so that our parents can make the most informed decision as we send our kids back to school. I think one of the most important things we do as parents is trust our school system when we send our kids to school to keep them safe. And we really pride ourselves at Glendora High School, and I know in the school district, on doing that. So lots of safety measures to go over with parents, ingress, egress, all of those things we've talked about in meetings here at the school district for returns of athletics and other groups as well that we will cover with our parents. And we'll put a survey out, get a better idea of who will be coming back in that model. And we call it the full hybrid. Again, the ABO model. So we'll have the option for the kids to remote in and see their classes online as they take place, which will be really interesting. So this is what it would look like. The minute-by-minute bell schedule most likely would be very similar to what we're seeing right now with our distance learning schedule. There may be some adjustments made depending on the guidelines that are set forth, particularly with passing periods. For example, because we don't really know what could happen, the county very well could come out and say, you could have passing periods, but you need to find a way to stagger them. And so we would be prepared to develop a system that would allow us to do that. So those things are in the works and they're in place for us to be able to do something like this, and that would be shared at our parent information evenings or through correspondence or any of the above options. So again, this is the ABO model. A would be on campus 2 days a week in those similar blocks that we see right now. Wednesday would be that gap time to do some cleaning before Group B comes on Thursday and Friday. The rest of the groups would be online on Wednesdays. Actually, all groups would be online on Wednesdays to kind of give that separation between the two groups and to allow for that cleaning to take place. Again, that O option is there because we want to give our kids who aren't quite ready to come back yet that chance to still learn from their teachers and not have to adjust any schedules or anything like that. So in a nutshell, that is what we have in place, ready to go. Obviously, I think we're all hopeful for option C as we look to roll out a hybrid, and we're prepared to do that. Hopefully the guidelines tomorrow will allow for that, but if they don't, we still want to bring our kids back on the 8th of April, and we still want to give them that connection, that support that they need, because we need to start transitioning our kids back onto our campuses. And I'm really proud to be a part of a district that is allowing us to do that so soon in compliance with the most recent health orders. You know, we really are kids' first school district, and we're doing our best to get our kids back as soon as we can. So thank you for your support in doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Brummett. Excellent report.
Are you all, board members, are you okay if we just wait till Mr. Letourneau's done?
Thank you.
Okay, we're on your, Mr. Letourneau, you're on the hot seat again.
It's okay.
He likes it.
Which one? Oh, I thought you were doing it. It's okay. There we go. The challenges, huh? First of all, I would like to just thank Matt and Dr. Summers for being a sounding board for me. Only because it's like at the other schools, they can bounce things off each other. I can bounce things off my counselor if she wasn't on maternity leave. But with Matt around and Dr. Summers, I'm able to bounce ideas off them. And then Becky, being the former principal there, makes it a little easier because she gets the clientele and she understands where I'm coming from. So thank you. And Matt, thank you. For us, same thing that my colleagues, we're looking at March 18th to bring the teachers back. And when I say bring back, we're talking 8 teachers for me. And we'll get them all in there. And that'll give us an opportunity to just kind of meet and just kind of talk and go over some ideas and thoughts on how we want to approach this. For us, it's, gosh darn it, Dr. DeLeon, you just got to open it up. Tell the county, works the magic, but I need passing periods in order for me to be effective. For my school to be effective, like every school, I need passing periods. So we're just hoping on that. But we had to do a little bit of a flipped hybrid. And the reason we did that is because if I open up for my students from like 1 to 2:30, chances are pretty good I'm not going to get much in the way of attendance. Okay, because when the school day ends for my folks, and they're out doing the next aspect of their life for that day. Okay, and it's not going to be skateboarding down to Whitcomb at 1 o'clock to 2:30 to get a little bit of extra help. Even though we're there and my staff would welcome it, it's probably not going to happen. So we want to do the flipped hybrid where from 8:30 to 10 in the morning, they have an opportunity to come to Whitcomb and take advantage of the staff that's there. And the way it would work, 8 to 10:30 would be, or excuse me, 8:30 to 10 would be offered to all of our students. Then we're giving them that 40-minute lunch that gives them an opportunity to get home. And I would be crossing my fingers that they make it home so they can get to their classes. Now, some of them will, and some of them will have an opportunity to stay at the school in the classroom with their teachers. Cohort of 14. In this case, it says 14 to 2, but it'd be 14 to 1. And it wouldn't even be that big. We could make it even smaller based on my population there. But that's our goal, is to be able to get those kids who want to stay. Those kids who want to go home, go home. But by making that hour and a half at the beginning, that means instead of 6 periods each day, they'll go 3 periods on Monday, then the other 3 periods Tuesday, back to the first 3 periods Thursday, finish it off on Friday, with Wednesday being the wellness. We can use subs and overloads to reduce the class size, but I know the option's there. Dr. DeGrazzi will make it available to us, but we wouldn't need it. It's just because we just don't have the population. Whereas my colleagues had different ideas for what they would do for their time, with me it would be strictly academic assistance, but mental assistance. And when I say mental, I don't like the word mental. I'm talking about an opportunity for them to talk, an opportunity for them to meet with guys like Ralph, who you saw here, who every student on that campus loves, Ralph Love. And it's an opportunity for Ralph to be able to talk with them because Ralph loves every kid on our campus. Okay, and that's what we need, and that's what I've got. I've got a group of teachers who love to talk to these kids, and the kids love to talk to them. Everybody has a connection with someone, so that's what makes it kind of nice. The at-promise students who are on campus from 8:30 to 12:35, like I said, they can stay if they want through the nutrition break and through the rest of the period if they so choose. If we can do that, no passing, or do passing, excuse me. If they can do the passing, that would be just absolutely beautiful for my kids. Like my colleagues, we would send home surveys to find out who would be willing to come back. And I know some of them are going to stay at home. That's just all there is to it. One of the things that's been a great surprise for me, I just wanted to throw this in, is that some of the kids who we really had to work hard with, but still had their struggles last year, they're doing phenomenal at home. You know, I've got a few seniors who didn't have a prayer of graduating. Well, I didn't think they had a prayer of graduating at the end of last year, but they're doing great. And, you know, the parents have said, can he just stay because there's no distractions when he's at home? And that's what we want to do. If the distractions are at home, come. If the distractions are at school, stay there, okay? But we want, whatever it is, I want you to graduate. So 6 shorter periods per day if we're able to do passing periods. And that we would stick on the schedule we're in right now, which is 37-minute classes, okay? And that's just fine for the kids. They're starting at 8:30. They're getting out at 12:30. Gives them an opportunity to go straight through. So there's no opportunities to collaborate outside. Sure, the passing periods, you know, but we've got enough people there that we can make the passing periods happen quick. But by not having a lunch or not having the breaks, we don't have to worry about supervision of those kids during that time. Okay, and then we can still do the virtual office hour afterwards if we need to be, but I'm sure once we run the 1.5 hours at the beginning and we get them through the classes, even though my staff will be there, the kids won't. They're gonna take off, and that's great. I would encourage them to go off and do what they need to do after that type of a day. So that's where I'm at right now. Everything for me, we just need passing. We just need happy so that my kids will be content. That's it for me.
Thank you, sir. Nice.
Are we going to have a panel here?
We got
There
a
you go.
panel.
We're back for comments or questions.
Okay. Board members, are you ready? Mrs. Merkley?
Well, I don't have a lot to say, but I just appreciate all the different scenarios that you're having to pick this up. Sorry, that my microphone is being weird. Okay.
It's working. It's working.
Oh, I hear feedback. You don't hear
Oh.
it? Okay. All right. Then, yeah, it happens to me all the time. Right. But all the different scenarios that you've had to work through, that just is so amazing to me that, and now you know, oh my gosh, I might have to do something different tomorrow. And then I talked to Mr. Letourneau with your amazing staff. I see them, you saw how Mr. Love was dressed, that he dresses like that every single day to teach his students. And I just think that is so amazing. I think the important thing with all of you is that it's obvious that you love the students and that the staff loves the students. And that makes all the difference. No matter how many times you have to pivot, you have to change, they feel your love and your care. And thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Okay, a couple of questions for the high school. So just for the public's information, so especially as we look at hybrid models for GHS Scenario C, there's probably questions coming in, how does goal play into this? Or if it doesn't play into it, just because people might be confused with the cohort O and goal.
That's a great question. For clarification, goal it's kind of a standalone independent study program right now. So it wouldn't really affect goal. Students who were to choose to remain online would still be accessing their normal classes with their normal teachers, just through an online platform like Zoom, through our webcams that we've purchased for the teachers. So separate from goal, totally standalone, accessing their normal classes with their teachers as they teach them to a live group of students in front of them.
Okay. And if, say, April 8th or 10th or 9th, right? and I have a child that's going to the high school and they're in cohort A, and a couple days in, they say, you know what, I think I just want to be in cohort O. Is that something possible, or is it once you're in a cohort, you are fixed?
That's a great question. So not fixed necessarily. We would hope that if someone commits to joining the in-person instruction A or B group, that they would stay there so the numbers work for us as we separate the groups. But if it's not working out for a student and they learn better and are doing better online, and it's going to be more successful, or they're going to feel safer, certainly I think we would entertain the idea of allowing them to join cohort O and learn solely online. I don't think that they would be coming back once they make that decision after 2 weeks to say, you know what, I think I'm going to go back to cohort A.
Sure.
I like it better. So I think there will be some freedom to, if it doesn't work for them, maybe move into cohort O. But once you're in O, going back into A or B would be a difficult proposition as we look to move forward.
Yeah, I'm just trying to set expectations for the public, that
Sure.
it's not just this free-for-all. I also want to just say, as you have said, just to remind the public that we have really never been in the scenario of being at the red tier, and that's why we've never been at the possibility for passing periods.
Right.
So I appreciate everybody's reminder over and over again that it's not that you are trying to keep the students away from campus, but this is what the guidelines you have been given, and you're trying to do it phased and responsibly. So I appreciate the feedback, and thank you for the detailed presentation.
Absolutely.
Mr. Brummett, please don't, I just want to follow up with Dr. Fernando's question. A lot of parents are going to, or some parents, I'm not going to say a lot, I don't generalize, will pick the O until they figure out if it's safe enough for their kids to come back. I think they've learned that at elementary too. So if a parent decides 2 weeks in, or a student, that, okay, I'm feeling better about how things are running here, I'd like to have my student back in the classroom. How would that work?
That's difficult to say, especially if we have a 50% capacity, and we have our students that are 6 feet apart, and the room is capped at 50%. It's full because the student's chosen to learn online. We've adjusted the groups so that they're 50-50. It might be difficult to find a seat for them in a classroom. Not saying we won't have enough seats for our kids, but what might happen is as we shuffle the groups, there may be imbalancing that takes place if there's a lot of shuffling. After someone commits to the O group, obviously if there's an opportunity and they feel safer about coming back, they can make that request, and on a case-by-case basis, we could look to see if it's a fit for the student and if it works for the classrooms as well.
And is it the same type of a setup as the middle school has? So let's say you've got a kid who's got PE the same period that they're in there, and somebody is in chemistry, or can the PE kid go outside, or how does that work?
So in our hybrid models, they would be with their classes through the bell schedule. So if they were in PE, they would be with their PE classes. So those types of courses, I'm glad you asked that question, are a little tricky to navigate. When we look at not being able to use our locker rooms to change for PE, we've processed on what PE could look like. We don't want kids to work up a giant sweat in their normal clothes throughout the day and then get sent off to a class. But we can find ways to engage them and get their minds working and be physically active without overexertion. So that's a long answer for a short question.
No, it's
what I would say to that is they're going to be with their classes. They're going to follow their bell schedule. If passing periods are allowed, they will move from their classes throughout the day as they normally would, as it currently stands right now.
Okay, I'm sorry, I kind of jumped ahead from.
It's okay, follow-up questions
Go
are
ahead.
always, you gotta ask when you're thinking about them. I am very hopeful that option C is what we're going to find out tomorrow, but if it's not, as I put my parent hat back on, when you're cohorting any of your students, and I know that you all are trying to be thoughtful about families with ages, multiple grades, multiple whatever, trying to keep the schedules same that way for work situations, et cetera. How the logistical challenges are crazy. How are you choosing those cohorts, and will students necessarily be with any of their actual teachers? If you're in the learning lab, or if you're in the Tartan tutorial, whatever the case might be, could they end up where they're not with one of their 6 teachers, they're just with a random teacher, or Are they in with any of their classmates? How are you cohorting those kids if that's the situation that we end up in?
So for GHS, we're looking at a number of options for that.
Okay.
One of them is an opportunity to rotate. So like, let's say first week we bring kids back, they might be with their first period teacher. The next week they might be with their second period teacher. That way, if that's a bare minimum we could offer, if it's tartan tutorial, they'll at least be able to get that face-to-face time with all of their teachers as we approach the end of the school year. We're looking at a couple of other options as well.
So how does that work as far as like cohort pods for safety are concerned? Because they don't have the same kids in their class for period 1 that they have for period 2.
Sure. So like in that type of model, we would be hopeful that that there would be some guidelines that were set forth, that a period of time, distance between yourself and others. Because again, when all these cohorts are socially distanced, we'd be looking at maybe a little bit of a gray area there where we could say, you know what, you were with that group 1 or 2 days last week, socially distanced. This next week you're gonna be with a different group, but it's not daily changing of class periods like we would see in a traditional day. So that's kind of the difference when we're talking through that. That's an option we're looking at. The other option is, we could look at tiers of grades and who's doing well in certain classes and giving them, access to support during those class periods as well.
Well, here's to option C, because trying to figure out all those cohorts in option A and B seems really challenging to me. I do want to say thank you, Mr. Letourneau, for your candor as it relates to the model that's going to work best for your students. I really do appreciate it. It's a unique group of individuals, and you have to tell us what's going to work very specifically for those kids, and you always do, and you advocate for them, and I really appreciate it. I don't have any other questions right now.
Mr. Ellenson?
I don't have any other questions. It's all been answered, but thank you for putting your thought into, you had to run out all these different scenarios. You basically had to plan for different times from the very beginning. But I think you're giving everyone here at the board level, and by extension, you'll be giving the entire community of parents confidence that everything has been thought of, and that we have everything that we can possibly cover in advance for doing it. I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed that we're passing through, because that seems to be the most important, effective, and actually accomplishing what we want to. So, hoping we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, for our audience that we have out in the internets, if you will, when you say we put this plan together, could I have like each level tell me who participates in your planning?
So for middle school, it was like Mr. Brummett said, we had a lot of different committees. We had the LRC, we had our logistics team. Dr. Summers worked extensively with us. And then we continued to work with our school site team every step of the way, looking at here are the different things, here are some different plans, what ideas do you have? Constantly getting feedback and trying to keep them in the loop, because we also understand we want our kids back, but we need our staff ready to do it. So, and we have, two brains, we can run a lot off of each other, but having all of those voices in there makes a big difference for us, making sure we're getting the best ideas and the best model to meet our kids' needs.
And would you say that your teachers have been informed along the way as well?
Yeah, we have tried to keep them informed throughout. They were instrumental in looking at our small cohorts and helping us build that matrix to prioritize, and really, we couldn't have done it without our teams. Yeah.
Thank you.
We had our site-based scheduling logistics committee convene in the fall and again in the winter.
Is that made up of teachers and admin?
Yeah, any interested staff we invited, and we sort of looked at different hybrid models that were out there existing in different counties. That process goes back district-wide to the summer, where we had some models to work with as well. That conversation started long ago. We actually had our department chairs go to our different curricular departments on campus in January and review the models that our committee on site, in partnership with the district as well, favored, and talk through that. Initially back then, I would say because of the spike in COVID at the time, the optimism of that happening maybe at the time wasn't as high as it was recently. And we had our department chairs last week also review again the models we have in place, looked at needs, looked at wants as we come back. And this has been an ongoing process that's included many stakeholders on our campus, classified, certificated, you name it. Anybody was invited on our staff, and it's been a really collaborative process. And again, fingers crossed for option C, but we'll be ready for anything.
Thank you. Mr. Letourneau?
For me, it's the six, I've got 6 Whitcomb teachers and I've got 2 part-time ROP. We just meet once a week. I'll just say, hey, we're gonna meet tomorrow. We're gonna talk about this. They're great. I'll talk about it. It's kind of like, just, what are we doing, Ron? What are we doing?
Yeah.
If I need something specific, I go to Dr. Summers. If it's the nitty-gritty specifics, how we can do this, but on the generality, the staff, very cohesive group, very.
So your staff knows what's going on all the time. And how about you, Mr. Brummett? You feel like your staff's been kept aware?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we've gone through this process, we've provided updates and discussion and review of those schedules throughout the process as they've been developed. And even, like I said, back in January, we wanted them to be aware of what our scheduling committee had built and start that initial discussion, just in the hopes that we would get to red at some point for a long enough time to be able to do this. So yeah, I would say our staff's been aware and has had the opportunity to contribute as well.
Thank you. I just have a couple more comments. I think there's lots of research out there on how kids do so much better with the soft skills like connection, making a connection with people on site. So I'm thrilled that you've all got that at the top of your list of priorities, keeping those kids connected. And I also think this crisis has given us opportunities as well, as we've learned that some kids do better at home online, like you said, and we found that at all levels. So I'm hoping that through this crisis, we're going to take advantage of the opportunities that it's presented us to learn more about how kids learn and what makes everybody, get connected to their sites. I'm just thrilled to hear all of this good news, and my fingers are crossed. If I could cross my toes, I would. We'll just, keep the good thoughts going that tomorrow we can be in that red area. And by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, this is one of those things where you read one thing, but you hear another. I'm told that we do not have to wait 2 weeks to be in the red to start anything. It can start immediately. So that's correct. Okay.
That's what we were told.
But what I was reading is it's going to take 2 weeks, but I'm going to go with what we're told here. So.
Well, we're waiting for that in writing, though. So as soon as we would love to have things in writing.
Absolutely. Dr. De Leon.
Oh, yes. So I do, first of all, want to thank all of you. You did a wonderful job with your presentation, but more than that, a wonderful job planning. This pandemic has, if anything, it's taught us flexibility, that everything is fluid, and that we have to plan. We have to plan for plan A, plan B, plan C, and hopefully one of them will come to fruition. But as Mr. Brummett very eloquently said, we have been planning with Dr. Summers and Dr. Kelson beginning in June and July. We began the Learning Redesign Coalition, and many of these plans were initiated there by hundreds of, we had meetings that had over 300 staff members, both certificated and classified, participating. And when we suddenly were told that we were going to be fully distant during the summer, I know you all remember that, and we had to pivot in a second. We were thinking like, oh man, we did all that really great hybrid work. Well, guess what? We're coming back to use it now. So I'm going to give an extended thank you to everyone who participated out there, who was in the LRCs all summer, who worked on this all fall. All the planning and forethought that went into everything, because we always thought we would be back at some point. We didn't know when, but we needed to plan for that. And that planning extended to teacher, support staff, admin. Let's not forget about the work that was done, Dr. DeGrazia and GTA on the work with the webcam MOU and the forethought to purchase webcams back in October and to have an MOU for the use of those, anticipating that at some point we would come back to hybrid and we would need them. And lo and behold, here we go, right? And so all of those things, all the people, CSEA, all the good work with trying to collaborate with our labor partners to get this done. There was just so much that has been done all along. And as we went through the process, there were times when things completely flipped. When we were going through the TK2 approval process, all the requirements changed in the middle. Now tomorrow, we hopefully will get another requirement. This is one where we're like really excited that we could get a change in the requirements and restrictions tomorrow for secondary, which they knew. I think there's been a lot of pressure on the Department of Public Health too, who I have to give it to them. They're changing all the time too, but I know that with the red tier being at the red tier, they knew, hey, red tier is what brings secondaries back. We better look at those restrictions because we've been telling it for months. We've been saying we can't do secondary the way we need to do it with no passing periods. And so all of those things have been constant, and now it looks like hopefully tomorrow we will get some relief. But I do want the entire community to know that this has been an ongoing process, lots and lots of planning and many, many hours led by all of these wonderful people here. And if we could bring our secondary kids back today, no, passing periods, no cohort limits, we would, because we want them to be back on campus. And we are really hoping for those restriction changes tomorrow, and we will be letting the community know and updating everybody very soon. But a thank you to everyone who's been involved since day one, because this has been a long haul waiting for Red Tier to get here. And I do have to thank all of you here tonight, and good job on your presentation. Thank you so much. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Osborne and Dr. Kelson don't go too far.
Yep.
Dr. De Leon.
Yes, at this time, it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Kelson, Mr. Osborne, who will present to you the Los Angeles County Plan for Expelled Students. Thank you.
Thank you again, Dr. De Leon, trustees, community, and colleagues. We are here this evening to present a plan that is based on state law, Assembly Bill 922, required of school districts who, in this case, are located in Los Angeles County. So I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Osborne to present the details for our audience.
All right, again, thank you, and it's really nice to see everybody in person. So as Dr. Kelson mentioned, this is a result of Assembly Bill 922 and Ed Code 48,926. And so my goal for this evening is to give you an update on this plan that LACO, the Los Angeles County Department of Education, created because part of Assembly Bill 922 and Ed Code 48,926 mandates that local school districts have a basic plan to support students who are expelled while on distance learning. So I'm going to give you some background information into the actual plan itself, as well as my recommendations, then answer any questions that you may have. And so for the benefit of the public, I just would like to say that, Glendora Unified is within Los Angeles County. And so as being one of the districts in Los Angeles County, we have Los Angeles County Department of Education, or what we call LACO. And they oversee 80 districts within the greater Los Angeles area and almost have oversight over almost 1.5 million students. And so back in November, LACO surveyed all 80 districts to get input from them as to how we are servicing our students who are expelled, especially while we're on distance learning. And the goal of that survey was to identify service gaps. So what are districts lacking in servicing those students who may be expelled while on distance learning? Can you hear me okay, Will? Yeah, I can. Okay. So the resulting data from that survey is what was created to make this basic plan. And I'd like to say that since this is a county-wide plan of 80 districts, some aspects of this plan are certainly not going to benefit Glendora students, and it's certainly not going to, not all parts of the plan are going to be applicable to GUSD. So since we're governed by Ed Code, there are certain infractions, so disciplinary infractions that a student might have on a site campus that as a site admin, we have to recommend a student up for expulsion. And whenever a student makes a mistake, and there are always mistakes, we want to work through that plan. And so the student is typically suspended, and during the suspension, we'll go through an investigative process. The outcome of that investigative process is typically a hearing. It's an expulsion hearing, typically happens in a boardroom like this. And the outcome of that is certain recommendations by the hearing officers that are brought forth to the school board. As a school board, you have options, and I'll review those options right now. The first one is you may suspend the enforcement of that expulsion and place the student back on their school site. So you can say, you know what, we don't agree with this recommendation. This student is going back onto their campus. You're basically expunging that expulsion. The second recommendation is you may enforce the expulsion and place that student on a different campus within the district or a district alternative program. And that's per Ed Code 48,917. The third option to school boards doesn't apply for GUSD, but a board may enforce the expulsion and place the student in a district community day school. Now, Glendora, we do not have a district community day school, so therefore that recommendation doesn't apply to our students. The fourth course of action that a school board might take is they may enforce the expulsion and refer the pupil to a county community day program. So that is a program that is run by LA County, so not our district, LA County. And that is reserved for really extreme cases, and we'll talk about that. However the board decides to recommend, I think it's important that we always are looking at the best interests of the student. So we recognize that these are extreme cases. Students have made really poor choices, and there's a variety of them. And so we understand that there needs to be consequences. They need to be held accountable for their actions. But at the same time, while we're recommending how they're going to be expelled or if they're going to be expelled, we also need to take into consideration their academic progress as well as their overall social emotional well-being. And so part of any expulsion packet is a rehabilitation plan. And so a recommendation that I'll talk about later is when we're creating rehabilitation plans for our students, we want to really look at the whole child and work within the great resources. And let me reemphasize it, the great and many resources that we have here in Glendora to support our students for the sole purpose of them to learn a lesson, to heal, and to get therapy if they need it, and then ultimately to become a productive citizen and hopefully return to a comprehensive program. Whenever a board is recommending an educational program change, there are 3 conditions that program must meet. The first one is the site has to appropriately be prepared to accommodate students who have discipline problems. The second one is the site is not a comprehensive middle school, high school, or any elementary school. And the third is the program is not housed at the school site where the pupil attended at the time of the suspension. And that third one's really important. You could imagine little Eric made a really bad choice at my school site, right? I would not want to stay at my school site and have to deal with the ridicule. It's good to have a fresh start for those kids to go to another school site, preferably within the district, to seek counseling, therapy, to work on their academics for a period of time, and then re-enter the comprehensive program. So that is the ultimate goal, is that re-entering of the comprehensive program. However, that is based on the severity of that student's infraction. So in Glendora Unified, we have a few programs. The first is independent study. So we could recommend that the student go on an independent program similar to the Glendora's Online Academy of Learning. They also may go to a continuation high school or a model continuation high school, such as Wickham High School, or if the student is 18 or older, they could go to an adult education program. So as I mentioned, in November, LACO surveyed Glendora as well as the other 79 districts under their jurisdiction. And the sole purpose of that survey was to identify potential service gaps for students who are expelled but currently on distance learning. And so they identified 3 service gaps. The first is students are lacking access to engagement on distance learning. And so LACO in this plan also gives recommendations for school boards to consider. And for the first service gap, we really need to make sure that we're providing our students with all of the necessary resources for them to access the curriculum while on distance learning. So hotspots, Chromebooks, textbooks, online textbooks, all of those physical supports, as well as make sure that we're training staff and having professional development to ensure that our curriculum for alternative programs are engaging to our students. The second service gap that was identified by LACO was access to counseling and mental health services. So a lot of districts, not Glendora, but a lot of districts lack the resources available to support their students. We are incredibly fortunate to have built partnerships over many years to service our students with counseling and mental health services. So under the direction of Mrs. Fernandez, our district's coordinator of mental health, we could reach out to students and we put it in their rehabilitation plan to seek a variety of different counseling and therapeutic supports to ensure that they're healing from whatever trauma they might have, as well as being prepared for returning to a comprehensive program. The third is transportation and lack of alternate placement programs. So this is the one that, you know, Glendora is lacking in. We typically do not have a very robust transportation program, and we have very few alternative program placements. However, the placements that we do have in Glendora are incredible, and they have been effective, and they have a track record of really servicing students well over the course of the last 10 years. And so the recommendation from LACO would be that if we are lacking in any resource, that we create an MOU with a neighboring district to provide transportation to another program. So for example, if we cannot service a student for some reason and we need to recommend them go to a county community program, we would work with another district to provide them services maybe over there. Now this is in very, very extreme and rare cases. Again, I'd like to emphasize that most of the time, the majority of the time I'll say, we are fully equipped to support our students here in Glendora, and that is the recommendation. That is what we want to do. So although we understand these are extreme situations, an expulsion of a student is not something to take lightly. Typically, we want to make sure that all the other students are safe and protected, as well as the student that caused the infraction, and we want to make sure that through that rehabilitation plan, that student is supported both academically and social and emotionally. So, talking about the rehabilitation plan, what happens if a student is not successful? So if they do not complete the rehabilitation plan, or if they continue to cause or pose a threat to themselves or other students, what do we do? In that circumstance, the board would recommend placement in a program outside of Glendora Unified School District. So in closing, my recommendations would be to review the document. I have hard copies for you. Again, this is an overview of that document. I would recommend approving it. What's nice about this document is it is comprehensive. However, it is a basic plan. And LACO created this plan as a basic plan to give districts local control. And again, I cannot emphasize enough, we in Glendora always have had our mindset on helping all children in Glendora. And so regardless of what the infraction is, we're always going to look at the child as a whole child and do our best to service them the best way we can within Glendora. That might not always be the case, but that is truly our goal. So when the need arises, the recommendation would be to continue to follow county guidelines to ensure that both the recommendation and the rehabilitation plan includes academic and social and emotional supports. And we also need to make sure that we're providing the student with scaffolding, with a lot of support to ensure that they can meet the requirements of their rehabilitation plan. So with that, I'm welcoming any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Mrs. Merkley.
No questions right now.
Thank you.
Dr. Fernando.
Thank you, Eric. So just one question, just, looking at the alternative education program conditions, the point number 3, where the program is not housed at the school site, how do we, I'm not sure how to frame this question, but how do we consider the welfare of that other site? Because that's, I think, what we've had in the past here at the district, where I think myself as a board member sometimes have felt uncomfortable when we've had student situations and students have been potentially referred to a different site within the district. How do we kind of consider the care of those other students at that other site now that that student now is there?
Yeah, that's such an important part of the process. So we need to look at the benefit of the student that's moving, right? The benefit, that number 3rd one is the benefit's really for the student, right? To give them a fresh start.
Right.
As well as the other students who were at that site previously, because if it was a fight or a drug possession, a terrorist threat, whatever it might be, we want to make sure that they're safe. And so in that circumstance, distance is a good thing. Time heals all wounds, right? So that's a good thing. But as we're moving a student from one site to another, we need to make sure that that other site is fully prepared. And so the list of programs that we have that I presented in there are typically already sites that have staff that are trained for students that have discipline problems.
Okay.
If it is a comprehensive school, which is most of the time not the recommendation, not to be a comprehensive middle school or high school or any elementary school, that's in the plan. So that's rarely happens. Typically it needs to be an alternative setting, similar, like in Glendora, it would be Wickham High School or an online program like Goal. If the student is not being officially expelled, so if the board chooses not to expel, to suspend the expulsion, or through the hearing process, it's not officially done, sometimes we will transfer that student within comprehensive sites within GUSD. So that's a little bit different a situation, but we always want to make sure that that staff is informed, that they're supported, and most importantly, that the student is supported, and that part comes through the rehabilitation plan.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Reuter?
Thank you for this presentation, Mr. Osborne. Fortunately, as a board member, I have not had terribly many circumstances of expulsions to have to deal with, but the policies and procedures that you set forth tonight don't feel very different from the path that we have always followed here in Glendora. So while I appreciate that LACO is putting policies and procedures in place, it doesn't, and correct me if I'm wrong, the supports and the rehabilitation and all the different steps that you mentioned feel like what we've been doing here all along.
They're incredibly similar, yes.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Ellenson?
Thank you for a comprehensive report, Mr. Osborne. I just wanted to talk about the community day school at East San Gabriel Valley ROP, because as a member district of the ROP, we sign an MOU every year with them, and that's an option to us. I'm wondering how that fits into the different scenarios and options that you would consider.
Yeah, so community day schools would be for extreme cases. And so that would come out of the investigation and the hearing, and ultimately would be brought to you as the board to make that determination. But typically that's for really extreme cases. The recommendation from LACO, and it has been past practice, is that we do our best to support our students within the programs that we have. Now, that might not always be the case. It depends really on the infraction. And so we have several options available to us as a district and through this plan.
And please consider the ROP Community Day School option, because the ROP district is moving into the city of Glendora, so it helps with transportation. It's a small program. Right now, it's really only open to the 6 school districts in this area that are member districts of ROP. So I think it's a good alternative in the event that we do find ourselves considering that.
Thank you, Mr. Ellenson.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to add my thanks. It's very good to have this information. This one's going in the keep pile because you just never know when you're going to need it. And it's always good to be reminded. Thank you for your presentation, Dr.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Osborne.
Very nice, thank you so much.
Okay, second interim. Mr. Weinstein, are you ready?
Dr. DeLeon, Board of Trustees, thank you for allowing me to present our second interim financial report. So the second interim financial report, we presented first interim in December when I first joined the GUSD family. The second interim is one of our most critical reports, and it is the most critical report is because this is when the budget process starts for the following year, right? When we have second interim, we have a very good idea of where we're going to end up at the end of this year. We also have the initial governor's report on what the budget should be next year. There are revisions, but we also have that. And then also we have a good idea with working with Ed Services and other departments of what some of their goals will be for next year. So now we get to start the conversation of what our budget is next year, and it's going to be based on what we see what we're going to happen this year. And then within the second interim report, there's a multi-year projection that takes into consideration of how we're going to approach budgeting for the following year. So the way it normally starts is our second interim starts this, and then at the end of the year, we go into budget adoption, which is in June, and that is right after the May revise from the governor, and from there we have the unaudited actuals from this year, and then we have the audited actuals, and then again we're back at first interim. So with these interim reports, we are mandated by the CDE to give at least 2 interim reports throughout the year, so that there's no surprises for the CDE, so that at the end of the year they know that you're financially sound. And they give three ratings. One is a positive, one is a qualified, and one is a negative. We are currently at a positive, and at the end of this, not to bring any drama, but at the end of this, we'll still be positive. So when we approach second interim budget, we have to have certain assumptions. How do we want to approach the budget, right? So we take a very, very conservative approach. And my goal is always to look at worst case scenario, to then back from there, take a look at what is most likely, doing some linear projections based on what we've done historically, as well as what we're doing this year. Also looking at the changes that come and also the governor's budget for next year. So we're generally conservative. This year we have something special. We have a trans funding. If you remember, there were deferments in how we're getting our cash. We borrowed $7 million in this trans funding. There's some financial costs that are built into the budget from that trans funding. Mostly it's the financial transactions. The interest is almost nothing. So ADA, one of the things we did do in this report, we adjusted our ADA to the 1920 as ADA, because what we found is that there wasn't that large of a difference between our 2018-19 ADA and our 2019-20 ADA. And as I reported in first interim, because of some of the waivers that were given by the CDE, it allowed districts to almost go 2 years with the same ADA. Those with declining enrollment like us could end up in a very bad situation if we don't take a real hard look at that. So we made adjustments this year on our budget so that we accepted our report for our 2019-20 P2 report, which is what we've asked LACO to fund us at this year, which is 6817. It's 108 less than the original adopted budget in ADA. Our current ADA estimate for next year, going in for the end of this year, which will bring us into next year, is we think we'll end up at the end of the year at 6803, which is just a little bit less than what we have right now. Unduplicated count is still at 2175, and we've been relatively flat. It's right around 32%. We hope next year, with taking some new processes in our unduplicated count, in doing our CalPads and how we gather that financial information, we're gonna do a new process. Something that's been very successful in the past districts that I've worked with, and we're hoping to push that number up past the 35%. New additional COVID funds came in just recently, so we've added $4.4 million in COVID funds. Even though most of those COVID funds, as you'll see in the budget, will be spent next year, they are actually being received this year. So we have to add them to this year's budget. We've also adjusted again our health and welfare premiums as well as employee contributions, and that also includes workman's comp or taxation for payroll and different things like that. Workman's comp changes often. Budget income and expenditures are carried over in our restricted funding. So that 4.4 you'll see in the budget, although we receive it this year, we're not going to be able to spend all of it this year. So as we look at it, you'll see that it'll be put into our reserves under restrictions, brought into next year's funding, and we had to look at both the expenditures and the income. So if you bring in the income, you know you need to spend it or lose it. So we also had to add it to our expenditures too. And then again, our MYP adjusted to much more realistic planning numbers. So when we went to our MYP, we took a look at a budget planning to make sure that we're actually planning our MYP and not just letting numbers roll, that we actually have action plans in place. We take into consideration the PARs that you guys are offering. We take into consideration all the different things that we're seeing this year in our expenditures. We're doing our linear projections, and we're getting a much more accurate MYP. So our revenue summary, and what I did here was I included not only our adopted budget, which you started out in June, but what I reported in first interim, which was in the beginning of December, and where we are at second interim. And you can see our LCF entitlement is relatively flat. So it was a very good estimate at $64 million in our adopted budget, and we're at $64 million and just $115,000 up a little bit. So it was a very good estimate and a very good beginning. Our federal revenue and our state revenue is actually also very accurate. However, if you see that we are up about $11 million between the two, but that's really the COVID funds. So when you did your adopted budget in the very beginning, you didn't know exactly how much COVID funds. It was an estimate, wasn't included in your adopted budget, included in first interim, and now we have $4.4 million more in state and federal funding. We included that, which also brings us about $11 million in total COVID funding, and that's really the difference that you see in your revenue spending there. Other revenue, we're up about $300,000, and that's just local revenue that is coming in from different aspects. So we have a total revenue stream of $84,772,000, and that's our expectation for the end of the year. Next page is our expenditure summary. Very similar. We've done some very good, the team did some very good on the adoption budget. As you can see on our certificate salaries, we have a second interim of just about $165,000 difference between your adopted budget and second interim. And we'll go through the reason for that. And the classified salaries also, we're about $600,000 difference in those. Those two salaries as well as the benefits, the difference really is our expenditures and encroachment of the daycare and the preschool. So normally what you would see in normal budget years when there's an encroachment from another fund, whether it be adult education, cafeteria, food services, or your daycare preschool, you would see an actual transfer at the bottom of the budget. You'd see that we're transferring $600,000-$700,000 from the general fund into the other funds. The reason why you're not seeing it this year is because you can't transfer restricted funds. And so the daycare and the preschool is being supported by the COVID funds because we needed to hire extra staff for the daycare that we're offering, and it's paid through COVID. So actually it's really just taking those salaries, taking them out of the current fund that they would normally be in, which is 63 in the preschool daycare, and putting them into Fund 1 and paying them through Fund 1. And that's really where the expense difference is there. Your supplies are your PPE COVID purchases. So, and that includes Chromebooks. So you're really looking at your Chromebooks, your PPE supplies, and you didn't have that plan in the very beginning. So we have about a $5.6 million increase in our COVID purchases. And then just regular COVID services that we're using, external services, comes out another $230,000. We're flat on our capital outlay, and other expenditures is basically our transfer to either LACO or our SELPA services for special ed. So overall, we have expenditures of about $80 million, which is about a $6.7 million increase from our previous adopted budget. So a lot of people say, well, you've got all these COVID funds, how are you spending it? I wanted to give you just an overview of how we're spending our COVID funds to date. We also have planned expenditures coming up. But so far in this year's, not the $4.4 million, but out of about the $6.8 million in COVID funds, we have our COVID safety protocols, $400,000, distance learning IT, which is your Chromebooks, hotspots, and infrastructure, you're about $2.4 million. PPE totals over $300,000. The $400,000 of COVID safety, that's more of you're talking about your thermometers and different actual structural things within our program. The PPE is the personal PPE equipment that we wear, whether it's masks or gowns or face shields and things like that. So in the COVID safety, hand sanitizers, our cleaning fluids and stuff would be in the COVID safety, where my masks would be in the PPE safety. And approximately $1 million in salaries and benefits were paid through COVID funds also. So about $4 million has been expenditured. Remember, this expenditure report is through January 31st. We have 5 months to go in that, and that would expend out the rest of that $7 million in COVID funds for this year. Ending fund balance, and this is really one of the most important screens to take a look at, and it'll give you an idea of how we move forward in our MYP. So our beginning fund balance across the top of the screen, as you can see, is $12,157,604. There's no audit adjustments. We always have a clean audit here. So in our adopted budget, we expected a shortfall of about $300,000. At first interim, we had lowered that down to about $45,000. And because of the $4.4 million that we're getting, we are actually going to roll over about $4.5 to $4.6 million, maybe even closer to $5 million as some of that comes up. Those are restricted funds to be used in the following year. We have all the way to August of 2022 to use these funds. But I do want to praise the Fiscal Services Department. As you can see, when I came in here, we had a shortfall of $300,000. Our fiscal services staff worked really hard. By first interim, we had already knocked it down to $45,000, and we only got $4.4 million in COVID funds. So there's about $165,000 plus that we would have ended up. We would have been in the positive at the end of this year because of the budget cutting that we did. And that, if you remember in first interim, we gave you a budget cutting plan to get us back into the positive before second interim, and we were very successful in doing that. And then a 4.861 at the end there, that is our restricted carryover. So out of all our expenditures, and this isn't just our COVID funds, you're talking about our Title I funds, our extended learning funds, all the different restricted funds, our lottery funds, all those add up to about $4.8 million, and that is what we're going to actually be carrying into next year. So our ending fund balance categories, and this is a screen that I changed a little bit from first interim after some comments from the board to make it a lot more clear what our funding balance or what the Fund 1 capital reserves actually look like. You know, I have to take blame for that. I really just took the way I did it at my previous district and didn't really look at how Mark did it before me. And this gives you a better idea of the transition of how Mark presented it to the way I'm presenting it. So as you can see in our adopted budget, we had an ending fund balance of $11.8 million. By first interim, it was up by $12.1 million. And now in second interim, I'm happy to report we'll be at $16.7 million in ending fund balance, which is a real positive fund balance. So, but if you look at what restricted funds, you can see there's $8.8 million in restricted fund balance. That means it has to be spent for those categorical funds. So Title I funds and our COVID funds, we have to spend them exactly the way those monies were given us to spend. We don't have freedom to spend them any other way. Also, there is a timeline on restricted funds. Restricted funds don't go on forever. We may seem like it does because we're always rolling restricted funds, but every dollar we get in, there is a time limit of when we have to spend it or lose it. Assigned funds are basically funds that have been predetermined for future expenses. So these are expenses that we know are coming up, for instance, a textbook adoption or something similar to that. We know these expenses are coming up in the future, and we have actually put aside reserves for those future expenses. Mandated reserves, so here we show assigned all the way through $4 million, and we're about $3.7 million in second interim in our assigned. Mandated reserve is a mandate from the CDE, 3%. We have to keep 3% reserves to be considered a positive certified district. And that leaves us with our unrestricted or unassigned. And this is really the extra reserves that we have, or what I like to say, it's our district emergency savings account, right? And so you can see when you look at this, we have at the end of the second interim, we'll be at 2.16% in what I consider our emergency savings account. And 2.16% is always based on our expenditures. So we look at our total expenditures, we take our amount that's left over, we divide it by our total expenditures, and that is where that percentage comes out of. So it's not based on your income, it's always based on the money you spend, right? So 2.16, I have to say that that's a little low. We'd like to start building that up. It's obviously better than we did in our adopted budget. But if you really think about it, we should be at least over twice the mandated reserves, and possibly the board. In the future, I'd like to bring a policy before the board to mandate a minimum amount of reserves that you would like to keep no matter what. And it's usually based, I always suggest based on payroll. Like, you want to be able to make your payroll, right? So it's based on making sure we take care of our employees. And we take a look at how many months payroll that you would like to make sure that we always have in reserves no matter what, and we base our total capitalization on that. So here are some current expenses encroachment. The board always likes to know about where are some of the extra expenses that we're really not getting properly funded for by the CDE. So one of the big things, I know you've always talked about it, we talk about it at all the districts, all the CBOs talk about it. special ed's terribly funded, right? So and just to give an idea for the public and the people watching, I mean, you're really talking about a total budget of $8 million, right? $80 million. And over 10% of that, $80 million, should be funded. An additional 10% should be funded by the CD to help us with special education. And it's not, and that comes right out of Fund 1. So we get a certain amount of funding for special education, which is restricted funds. Above and beyond those restricted funds, there's $9.4 million that comes out of the general fund for special education services. In our daycare and preschool right now, we are encroaching about $1.4 million. That has a lot to do with COVID this year, but it is one of those paths that we have to start looking at our daycare and preschool and looking at it more of a business model to make sure it doesn't encroach in Fund 1. And I'm happy to report, and I want to congratulate Stacy Johnson, my Director of Food Services. She is breaking even, which is incredible for food services, and especially incredible when you still are fully staffed and you're doing grab-and-go lunches, right? So she's doing a really, really good job. So then it takes us to our multi-year. So we're ending up really good this year. We're ending up with a huge positive balance going into next year, so we have to start looking at our multi-year assumptions. We took another conservative approach. We're looking at a loss of ADA of about 108 per year from the COVID years back to normal school schedule. ADA is projected at 97.5% of enrollment. Unduplicated, and that's based on a historical average. Unduplicated pupil percentage, I'm keeping at 31.5%, even though we have plans of trying to move that up. We're doing conservative. We're not going to take that into consideration yet. Staffing reductions that we show within our multi-year are only through PARS retirement, which is an incentive-based retirement plan that the board approved, or attrition. 10% overall discretionary budget cost-cutting action plan is in on my projections. So that is basically all discretionary spending, not our supplies and different things like that, but discretionary spending. We did a 10% overall cut. And COLA is given to us through FCMAT and the CDE, which is for 21-22 is 3.84%. And that is actually a little over 2% for next year, and they're actually giving us an additional 1.5% for this year, but they're not giving it to us till next year. So that's kind of like a 2-year worth COLA in there, and that's why it seems a little high. And then 22-23 is 2.98%. No one-time funding is taken into consideration. I didn't look at any additional COVID funds that we would get next year. I didn't look at any type of additional grants that may be promised in our May revise or anything like that we're hearing rumors about. So we're taking in no consideration of any other one-time funding that we already have. So our multi-year projections based on first interim looked like this. We looked at that during our 2021, again, we would have taken a loss of close to $45,000. In 21-22, we would have lost $1.7 million, and then 22-23 is $1.5 million. And the reason I brought this up is because this is kind of a red flag to the CDE and the FCMAT, because you have 3 years of negative income, right? So what their expectation is not that you're always going to make money or that you're going to be able to put money in your reserves, is though that when you see 3 years of negative income, you have now taken steps so that by that third year, you don't have that negative income anymore, right? You've actually taken steps, or you put in an action plan to mitigate that. So this is what our second interim projections look like today. So this coming in this year, again, we're gonna take a $4.5 million increase into our capital reserves. Part of those capital reserves are restricted funds, and we will be spending those down. So that will actually hit our reserves when we spend down. So although there is a $2 million loss next year, we are rolling $4.5 million. So it's actually a $2.5 million increase next year. And then in the third year, an $800,000 positive. So really, we're looking at 3 years of positive income for the district, which is important, and of ending fund balance in year 22-23 of $15.5 million, which is a significant increase from our current $12 million. Some of our funds, other funds that we like to just let the board know about. Our adult education fund is very dormant right now because adult education is very dormant through our COVID. So we don't expect many changes really there. We have we plan on, it looks like we'll be about $10,000 in the positive, and we have a nice strong ending fund balance there. Food services, again, we're expecting to break even. No real change in their fund balance. Deferred maintenance, the reason I've highlighted deferred maintenance is although we have projected total expenses at $605,000, it's going to be a lot less than that. It'll probably be closer to half of that, more like $300,000. But we didn't feel we needed to adjust that at this time. We'll see what the expenditures are at the end of the year. Developer fees, looks like we'll have expenditures of about $267,000 above what our fee developer income is. But we do have a strong balance in there of over $3 million. Bond matching funds or bond facility funds, which is the money left over from the last bond, which is usually the bond matching funds or the interest earned on those bonds. So right there, we again are seeing the same thing where we're showing total expenditures of $400,000, and I think the expenditures will be probably less than $100,000 by the time the end of the year comes from the original adopted budget. Again, a strong fund balance there. Tax override fund is the county's fund. We have no control over that. That is basically how they collect taxes from us, and they push it through. So we actually don't touch that account. Our daycare and preschool, as you can see, really what we've done is we've mitigated that through our Fund 1, and we've wiped out their fund balance. So they literally are basically at break even on their fund balance, and those funds will become larger as we use additional COVID funds to supplement that program for the rest of the year, the rest of the 5 months. Other funds, again, our self-insurance fund. I get a lot of questions about this, even from our union partners and staff. So before 2018, we were self-insured on our liability insurance, and that JPA no longer is in existence. However, there is 25 years worth of claims that possibly come in, and we had to put reserves aside for that, and that's what this account is. So as those claims come in, this is where those claims are paid out of. And we have about just so you know, we have about $500,000 worth of claims this year. And then we have a foundation scholarship fund where there's usually about $8,000 in scholarships that are given out each year, and it still has a strong fund balance. It's a lot of information. And I see you guys are just still awake, so I'll open it up for questions for anybody who has questions on all of that.
Mrs. Merkley?
My husband's a CPA, and he says that government accounting is a totally different animal.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Anyway, thank you. I read it. Don't get it all, but I read it, and I appreciate all the work that you do. And I'm very grateful that your mind works this way.
Some people are. Dr. DeLeon.
Mine does not.
Dr. Fernando?
Did I miss the STIRS contribution that we have to
So
make?
STIRS contribution this year is going to be 21%, and PERS is 18%. But it's in our budget. It's budget under benefits. So our PERS and STIRS are all under benefits, as well as health and welfare and workman's comp. It's all in the 3,000s. So if you go back to, our revenue expenditures, under benefits, you can see there's $14.4 million. And actually, we're over budget by $28,000, and that is actually the PERS contribution. So that's in the beginning near the expenditure summary. And so our benefit, you have to really look at 20% of our salaries goes to CalSTIRS and PERS right now. And by 2 years, it'll be up to 23%. So it just keeps getting larger and larger,
That's
a
always
monkey on our
was
backs we have to bear. Yeah.
That was always a mainstay in the previous person's presentation about the cows.
Yeah, it's something we can't control, and it basically the reason why it's so high. I mean, the real reason, and being an investment banker for Bank of America, is that everything is based on projections of where you will be 5, 10, 15 years from now, and their projections were off for so many years. Why we have that $80 billion shortfall in our retirement funds, and now they're trying to make it up off of the back of the districts.
Kind of moving to the ending fund balance categories, I would really appreciate, the board having a conversation about, strategies around reserved policies. 2.16 seems very, very low. I mean, you're being kind, but
No. I mean,
it
is low, and I think that one of the things that we always have to remember is that the board is, the state sets the minimum, and the board sets the district policy. And most district policies are around 6% at least.
Yes.
You know, I think and not only that, but there's also, there's an investment policy that goes with it along with the reserve policy, and I'll be bringing that all to the board before the end of this school year.
Yeah. And finally, I just want to really appreciate the work of your office around the role of special education encroachment. I think this is an area that we need to work on. We have not been addressing this in the past. Really also appreciate the work that Stacy's team has done in food services, unbelievable fiscal management. So please pass
Absolutely.
Our commendations to her and her work. So, but again, great presentation.
Thank you.
Mrs. Reuter.
Thank you very much. This is a very clear presentation. I do appreciate all of the information and all your explanations. I share Dr. Fernando's concern as far as the reserve percentage. Having that conversation is important. Thank you for bringing it up before we even did. It is something that's important to me as well. And also looking at these encroachments, knowing what's coming down the road, knowing that we've got to be proactive in making some changes and making some decisions so that we don't end up with a negative balance there. So those are really my two biggest things. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the work of your department putting all of this together. I know it's a big team effort. Thank you very much.
And Jeanette and the team does a great job.
Absolutely. Mr. Ellenson.
Thank you. My first question is with respect to ADA, and I wasn't sure if I was tracking what you were saying. So for this current school year, 2021, we're funded on ADA from 1920.
2019 to 20. School year 2019-20.
Yeah, so we're always 1 year behind.
Correct.
Did you say that there's a change to that or something? It's 108 less than adopted budget.
Right. So at adopted budget, we took a waiver at the adopted budget to allow us to go to the 18-19 school year.
Okay.
We no longer need that fiscally. So what we did in order to have a better, in order for LACO and the CDE and FICMAT to look at our long-term plans and take a look at, you know, our declining enrollment and to make sure that we stay positive certified in our business plan that I submit with this to make sure that they understand that we have everything under control, we agreed with LACO that we would go to the 1920. So we'd still only be 1 year behind and not 2 years. So next year we wouldn't have a 2-year hit, which would bring us something like 255 declining enrollment.
I think that's what I was anticipating you were going to say, is that essentially we're taking a 100 student hit this year rather than taking a 200 student next year.
Right, and the COVID funds the COVID funds really allow us to do that this year. And so we're taking advantage of the one-time fundings that are coming in this year and next year and kind of bringing us back right to where we should be.
Okay, thank you. On the ending fund balance percentages that my colleagues have alluded to, thank you very much for suggesting a policy like that. I've been asking for a policy like that for quite some time. I've had to personally vote no on past two budgets because of the ending fund balance.
Right.
For years, I've personally felt that through my advocacy work in Sacramento with other school districts, that number, the minimum reserve of 3% plus the unassigned element has to be at least 6%. It was my floor. And so I think you're saying the same thing, that your recommendation would be to at least be at 6%.
Yes.
But that you can bring policy to us to decide what that number is.
Well, my recommendation would be at least 6%, and I think what we would look for is to be able to bring the policy to you sometime by the beginning of May. And once you give me that number, then I would be mandated by the board to bring you a business plan that gets us to that minimum, because obviously you can see we're not there yet now, right? So that would get you to the minimum, you know, within a couple of years.
I think that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, great. That's really great. Looking at your multi-year projections from first interim to second interim,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously on the second interim MYP, if you look at 2021 and 21-22, there's a lot of COVID one-time money that's kind of skewing those numbers, right?
Right, correct.
So I kind of look at 22-23 as the first kind of normal school district.
Right.
Where there's no COVID funding, there's no unusual one-time money coming in. And that's a very healthy and balanced can anticipate additional revenue. Because first interim revenue in 22, 23.
Oh, that's your COLA. So at first interim, they had us at 0 COLA for the next 2 years. Now, going to second interim and with the January budget, they have agreed, FICMAT and CDA have agreed to give us COLA for the next 2 years, and that's where you're seeing the main change. Although we are decreasing in ADA, the COLA is strong enough on $75 million that it actually will give us an increase in revenue.
And we talked about cost cutting, but again, it seems like expenditures may have increased in that school year from first interim. That's a little on the spot question though.
No. So you're really looking at salaries and benefits. So although we may reduce staffing, through efficiencies and attrition, you still have your step and column increases and your benefit increases and those type of things. So we looked at a 10% increase on that, and then supplies and discretionary funding, spending and things like that. And then also you have an average of 6% utility increases. And there's certain increases and insurance increases for our property and liability insurers. So we made sure all those increases are included in there, as well as though we looked at our discretionary spending of just extra funds, we decreased in there. So you're looking at a very accurate look at expenditures.
That's helpful, thank you. As Dr. Fernando mentioned, I think we were used to seeing, one of the other things we were used to seeing was the STRS and PERS increases. And so if you could incorporate that into your future presentations.
Oh, absolutely.
Just so that we see those percentages. Again, it's one of the things that CSJ often asks us to advocate for in Sacramento, and it helps to have those things be top of mind for us to see just how high those percentages are getting and how quickly the state is pushing us in those two areas when it comes to prevention.
I'll send that out on my Friday update this week too. I have those percentages for you, so you'll get them by Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weinstein, I need a little help with
Yes,
the
ma'am.
ending fund balance categories. So we're mandated to have the 3%, and then we have another 2.16%, or is 2.16 the total reserve that we
No,
have right now?
it's 3% is the minimum, and 2.16 is above and beyond the 3%.
So we have a 5.16
Correct.
reserve at this time?
Right.
Okay, I just wanted that to be cleared up in my mind. And I also would like to commendate Stacy Johnson, because it wasn't that long ago that we were looking at a, $40,000 deficit or something that, was it more than that? That, the unpaid lunches and, yeah. So that's really, says a lot about her skills in budgeting and making it work. And I know I sent you a note earlier about adoptions, and I'm a former teacher, and I like current adoptions, and especially science and social studies, because those things change very often. So I see on your multi-year projection here that we're not doing anything this year. It's been suspended. I don't see anything in 21-22, but I do see 22-23. Can you tell me why we can't do it next year?
Not that we can't do it next year, so I never want to say can't, not in front of Dr. De Leon, because she will.
Why we're not?
No,
How's that?
So what happened with the science adoption, and Dr. Kelson can come and join me, we suspended the science adoption, and we were actually in the middle of the science adoption. However, the reason why we're still keeping it out for 2022 really is because our textbook adoption and our one-on-one device plan, so going to one-on-one devices throughout the entire district, and our textbook adoption have to work hand in hand, because a lot of these textbooks are now going to be online, on the cloud, or actually downloaded onto the devices. So although all of our students have devices right now, it's not all district devices. So the idea is we're moving to one-on-one district devices by August of 2022. We'll be presenting a plan for that to the board. That includes getting all the devices, making sure the infrastructure is there, our firewalls are there, looking at all the learning softwares, the class management softwares, the library softwares, as well as the textbook adoptions, bringing them online to the devices, doing all that next year, all that work next year, so that we will be 100% one-on-one devices going into August of 2022. So the idea really was not to push it away where we're not doing the adoption, but that next year there actually will be discussing the adoption and choosing those textbooks. or this is the first time they're really going to be looking at hard copy textbooks and then textbooks that are online in the cloud that have all those bells and whistles where you can push the button and watch a video on, things. But science is the first one that we will be looking at because that was the one, Dr. Kelson, was suspended because of COVID. So, and I don't know, Dr. Kelson, if you'd like to add anything.
I think you did a great job, Mr. Weinstein. I would just say when the district previously looked at science adoption, we had to eliminate a couple of the publishers, as the history's been explained to me, because we weren't certain that we could go to one-on-one devices for our students. Now that the district has invested in that ability, that opportunity for our students, we're able to bring back some of the publishers that were very well liked by the teachers who helped with the pilot and consider those in a wider pilot to fully go forward with adoption that the teachers will really like.
Thank you. I think it's important for the public to know this too. And two areas that I have a passion for are technology and adoptions. So I'm glad to see that you're working together to get, we're moving forward with both because we need to keep our kids as current in this new century as we can, and they're going to face it in the workforce no matter what they do.
And we've already started our task force, our first task force meeting. Dr. Kelson and I had our first task force meeting last Friday. So we've already started that, and we're starting the action plan. And the action plan will be presented to the board in the next couple of board meetings where we'll present the full task force one-on-one device and textbook adoption action plan.
Awesome. That action plan, is it like a, it's going to go like a 5-year plan or a?
Yeah, so it'll be a timeline based on initial adoption and where we're at with each of our different subject textbooks adoptions. Some of them, I believe, are 2023 and 2025 are where the current textbook adoptions are ending, where we will need new textbook adoptions. So it should be a 5 or 6 year plan.
And on the technology side, is that including replacements as they
Yes, so that's one of the big
obsolete
issues that a lot of districts, there's two big issues that we have to look at. We have to look at infrastructure ability, not only for, everybody says, well, bandwidth you can buy. Really, we have to look at the ability to recharge these machines in the classrooms by using different pods and different things like that. We also have to look at a 4-year, and maybe the devices will get a little better in the future, will be 5-year, but right now, Will, our IT director of IT, is looking at a 4-year replacement cycle for all of our devices. And that not only includes the devices that the kids are using, but it also, we have to look at the devices that the staff are using, the teachers are using, and actually the devices that are in the classroom, such as document readers and things like that.
Right. Well, just as I'm sitting here processing all of this, I'm thinking we made a huge purchase of Chromebooks, for example, this year for a lot of kids. And it was kind of, because the kids we didn't have that capacity before. So all those Chromebooks are going to become obsolete at the same time. So that's what I'm saying. We have a little replacement plan for?
Yeah, and that's the idea of the replacement plan.
So that you're not hit all at once with replacing,
No.
6,000
So the idea is
Chromebooks.
you will have X amount every year that you will replace, and it'll just become part of your budget. So IT will have a budget of replacement every year.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Very much. Appreciate all of your work.
And you have an action item coming up a little later in your board packet for the adoption of our second interim, and I would recommend that we approve that adoption. Thank you. Yes, I would.
Okay, we now move to comments from the board. Mrs. Merkley.
I really don't have much. Let's see. I just want to again congratulate Wickham High School for becoming a model continuation high school. I'm just really excited and thrilled about that. I've just seen such growth there, and so I'm really thrilled about that. And I mentioned last week that Sandberg ASB received the Youth Recognition Award. Well, it was given today, and it was just such a nice ceremony. We had 80 people there. We had all of the kids. Obviously, it was Zoom, which is kind of sad, but they do so much. They have just really come together, and they are strong. And it was interesting because Mr. Osborne said that with distance learning, a lot of these kids are shining. They've had more 4.0s and more 3.0s than they have in the past. And so obviously not everyone is doing that, but it is still saying a lot about the teachers and the staff at Sandberg. So that was a good thing to hear. And that's all for me.
Okay. Dr. Fernando? No comments? Mr. Ellenson?
No comment.
Mrs. Reuter?
Yeah, thank you. First and foremost, I would like to thank our district nursing staff and all of the other support departments, et cetera, that helped to get the vaccination pod up and running this past Friday. It was a pleasure to go in and see the physical and emotional relief that our staff members and teachers had upon receiving that vaccine injection. We as a board and as a district have maintained that safety is the highest priority for our teachers, staff, and students this year, with a very close second of opening everything up and getting our students back into in-person instruction. But to talk with these folks and to see the relief on their face and the appreciation they had for the convenience of being able to come and do this in district. Of course, you can try and get on the My Turn site or fight Walgreens or whatever you might want to do, but I really do appreciate the efforts of all parties involved to not only make our staff, make everybody feel safe or make them all be safe, but also feel much safer as we all return to in-person instruction. And then I also want to welcome Ms. Thrower to the GUSD staff. I'd like to give a little bit of a communications timeline for me personally. I don't know if everybody knows, but I came to be on the board after being a co-chair for the Measure GG bond campaign that was an unsuccessful campaign. And what I really learned through that process is that it wasn't that we didn't need all the things that we asked for and all the dollars that we asked for. It's that our community didn't know that we really needed those things. That our teachers do a tremendous job with the resources that they have. And they do a tremendous job with the resources that we have. So our community just didn't know what they didn't know. And I really realized that that was an issue of communication. So that was the platform that I ran for when I applied to be on the school board here. Communication and transparency that went hand in hand so that everybody could make informed decisions. That's all I ever asked for is informed choices and informed decisions. Then in fall of 2019, which wasn't that long ago, but feels like it was a million years ago with the last year that we've had, we put out a survey that went out to all families, all community members, and all teachers and staff. And across the board through that survey, a very highly ranked need for all three of those categories was communications. So families wanted to know what was going on more in the school. Community members certainly wanted a better understanding because, as I mentioned earlier in my comments with the council members, the community and the school district have to really work well together for the community to be successful. And then from our teachers and our staff, we heard things like, we want to hear things earlier than when families hear it. There would be times where they would be getting the information at the same time as parents would, and they were maybe often caught flat-footed. So across the board, we heard that communication was of high priority for all those different shareholder stake groups. So the board did what we could at the time, and we outsourced communications. We brought in a really wonderful communication firms with Red Kite, and Nick did some amazing, and continues to help does amazing communication, especially as it relates to social media and videos, et cetera. But what that also did was create a little bit of double work, where a staff member had to gather all of the information that we wanted to have put out into the community and then transfer it over to Nick. And that was not efficient. That was a little bit cumbersome. This year we added an additional layer of communications
by having Dr. Prince do the Gazette for us, and she has done a tremendous job doing the Gazette, but she's also the principal of a school, right? Like, this is a very hard, a lot of work, and she has done a tremendous job. She is up for the task. I'm not sure when she sleeps, but communications is a really high priority to put on top of principal of a middle school. So finally, I'm sure through COVID funds, freeing up some general funds and the priorities of this school board to have a full-time communication specialist. Sorry for the long walk down that road, but that's what brought us here where we are today. It is an extremely high priority of this board to be communicating regularly with all the different stakeholder groups, our teachers and staff, our parents, and the community. So Ms. Thrower, thank you very much for joining us. I got to meet you a little bit at the vaccination clinic last Friday. You already were bringing all the news organizations in, and I saw your Facebook Live video, and you're really bringing an energy to the position that I'm excited about. So thank you and welcome. That's all.
Thank you, Mrs. Reuter. I echo every word she said. Not to be redundant, but I am going to be redundant about the POD, point of distribution? Dispensing. I heard a different D word. Point of dispension. Anyways, at Glendora High School, we served 100 people last week getting their first shot of the COVID vaccine, and 77 more vouchers were handed out. So 177 staff members last week got their first dose of the vaccine. And again, like you heard earlier tonight, 200 more this coming week. So we are on the road. I have to say, I live close to Glendora High School, and it was a joy for me to drive by and see students on the athletic fields, cars in the parking lot, band members in their different instrument areas out in front. Of course, from my house, I can hear the drums, and you never want to complain about that again. My children, when they were little, used to run down to watch and my son, who's now 40-something, used to call them the band marchers, because they would march up and down Valley Center, in the fall, getting ready for their performances. It's going to be a joy to my ears to hear that again. And I almost emailed Mr. Brummett a couple of times just to say, aren't you so happy? Aren't you so happy? But he mentioned in his presentation all the smiles he had on his face. Again, congratulations to Whitcomb. Couldn't be more proud. They do great, wonderful things. I was able to participate in Read Across America last week. I read to a third grade class here at Sellers, Mrs. Lindemeyer's third grade class. I read Bedhead, for those of you interested, and The Real Story of the Three Little Pigs, written by A. Wolf. So you can get his perspective on what really happened to those pigs. And it just so happens that I have twin grandchildren in that class, so it was a real pleasure. And they were like, what are you doing here? Because I didn't say anything to them, and neither did Mrs. Lindemeyer. So it was kind of a fun little surprise. I'm so glad, not so glad, I feel reinforced when I heard the presentations tonight from all of the principals about the LA County Department of Public Health, who really are, even Mr. Osborne mentioned how many districts are in the county. We get so many conflicting messages from them, and I think they're doing their best with all the things coming at them, but these are the same regulations for that our entire district faces. We're hearing the same thing that those principals heard. So I would just like to remind you to, one more thing. I would like to request for a presentation from the Williams site, from the admin there. I think it would be nice for the board to hear all of the programs that are going on down at Williams. So one of these evenings, that would be nice. I'm going to end it like I always do. Please help us keep these programs open. Help us keep kids back on campuses by wearing your masks, washing your hands, and keep your distance. Thank you. Let's see. We're now into public hearing. There is none. So public input. Oh, Dr. Summers.
Be read by Dr. Summers tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have 3 public comments this evening. The first one is from Heidi Lugwood Hansen. She is a parent and Glendora High School alumna. Dear trustees and Superintendent DeLeon, I'm writing regarding the opening of Glendora Unified School District classes. I have 3 kids in the district, elementary, middle school, and high school. My kids need in-person learning. Although all are managing to sustain their grades, I can tell you that they have had enough with Zoom classes. They are not retaining what they are learning, and they are at the point where they see no value in attending classes, and we have to fight with them to get out of bed and get on their Zoom calls and participate. It has been a year since we moved to distance learning. We are overdue to go back. I am disappointed with the district plans for reopening. As parents, we agreed to a hybrid model of in-person learning that was 2 days a week on campus, live for 4 hours a day. The elementary students are being brought back for 2 hours of enrichment learning 2 days a week, but they still have to attend Zoom for their regular learning each day. This is not what my son needs. He needs to be learning the core curriculum in person, not over Zoom. I can understand the need to break up the class into 2 cohorts due to COVID, but not bringing the kids on campus for 4 hours of in-person learning is not acceptable. I'm not looking for 2 added hours of enrichment. I'm looking for core learning for my kids. With the latest announcements for secondary schools returning, my understanding is that the plan is to bring the students back in cohorts in the afternoon for in-person tutoring. Again, this is not the hybrid model we agreed to. I expect more of GUSD, and that means bringing the students back for in-person classroom teaching and not Zoom all morning and tutoring in the afternoon. Both of my older kids have said they aren't going back on campus if they aren't attending classes with in-person learning that replaces their Zoom classes. I know it's more challenging with the older kids and COVID restrictions, but figure out a plan that allows for what the kids need and phase it in by grade if necessary. Our kids want to be taught in the classroom. I understand teaching in class and on Zoom at the same time is challenging, but it can be successful. I have a relative who has been teaching in person and online simultaneously in Harupa since October, and she has designated Zoom times during the morning for her distance learning students and designated times she teaches her in-person students. She basically alternates who she is teaching throughout the day so she can focus on each group of students and then assigns them work to do while she works with the other portion of the class. This takes planning and rethinking how we teach, but it can be done. Perhaps the board can take action to provide teachers with some resources to re-engineer their teaching days so we can bring kids back in person and not overwhelm teachers with teaching online and in person at exactly the same time. I appreciate everything that our district is doing to bring kids back safely, but we need to stop cowering to obstacles and find solutions that bring our kids back with full hybrid learning of our core curriculum in April. Regards, Heidi Ludwig Hansen. The second comment is from Laura Chanelia. Dr. DeLeon and trustees, it is apparent that you need to be reminded that ultimately the jobs you all do are supposed to be for the kids. You can remodel any office, create any position, hire any new high-maintenance employee, seek media attention, publish fancy social media posts, and pat yourselves on the back repeatedly. The fact will still remain that you are not acting in the best interests of the children to whom you are elected, appointed, or hired to serve. You seem to thrive on your power, your public image, and even winning against those of us who dare question you on anything. Why are you in the field of education? Is it easy money for you, a stepping stone to a higher goal? Not one of you has shown an ounce of humanity towards me or my child or others like us. More than one of you has lied to me directly. Does that make you feel good? Does it bring you satisfaction that you are playing with people's lives and the lives of their children? You were officially introduced to me several months ago due to my very real concern about the mental well-being of my son. Since then, and up until the moment of writing this email, not one of you has asked me how my son is or how he was doing. Not one of you. I cannot imagine how you can look yourselves in the mirror or sleep well at night. Friday night put a smile on my son's face, the source of which I haven't seen in almost 12 months. It was a moment I will remember forever. We received a letter saying that he will be going back to school on April 8th. He was going to get some semblance of a senior year after all. Hooray! I don't dare share with him the countless messages I have since received, telling me exactly what GUSD means by in-person instruction on April 8th. Apparently, it will be an optional hour to an hour and a half, 1 day per week, possibly 2. Optional, 1 hour, 1 day per week. This is not school. This is not reopening. This is not all that can be done within the limits given from the county and state. This is not what I chose when given the option of distance learning all year versus hybrid. Anything optional is going to be met with very little enthusiasm. These children, these high schoolers, want and need to be in school. It shouldn't be an optional tutorial. Anyone not wanting to come back would have selected distance learning. The rest want their schooling back. They don't want an optional hour of tutorial 1 day a week. Please don't taunt them by implying that school is reopening unless it is really and actually reopening. You can continue with your self-serving behavior, checking the required boxes so that you can say you reopened and collect your money from the state. You can delude yourselves and others into thinking that you're doing a great job. Many of us know better. Many of us have seen the downfall of this district over the past several months. It is a tragic shame what you have done. This isn't me versus you or one group of the community versus another. This is about a school board and superintendent who often point out how wonderful they all are rather than actually be wonderful toward the students of this district. And the third and final public comment is from Jonathan Lane. And he writes, to the Glendora Unified Board of Trustees, good evening. My name is Jonathan Lane. I currently have 3 kids in your district, one in 1st grade, one in 7th grade, and a sophomore. I am writing tonight to express my disgust for the board and Superintendent DeLeon for unethical behavior over the past year. The Glendora community was told through the Weekly Gazette that the waiver applications were submitted on October 7th. For nearly 6 weeks, we were told that while they were submitted, we were waiting on LACDPH's approval. Meanwhile, other districts were getting approved. Daily, I track the status of these applications on the Department of Public Health website, and yet couldn't understand why our applications weren't being approved. It wasn't until a fellow resident shared a letter from the County Board Supervisor's Office, Catherine Barger, stating, quote, the school district submitted their application on week 1, October 7th, when the waiver became available, and received feedback that their application was incomplete the following week. They just resubmitted their application on November 17th. My question is, why did you continually lie to us in the Gazette for nearly 6 weeks, knowing they weren't approved? Did you know that DeLeon was telling us this? If you knew, then why did you continue to let it happen? It's one thing if one person is lying, it's another when an entire group of people is. I have attached the letter from Supervisor Barger for your review. Thank you, Jonathan Lane. And that letter is, Mrs. Wells has that for your review.
Thank you, Dr. Summers. All right, we'll be moving on to the discussion action items. Let me put my glasses on. We need to approve the second interim report as presented. Is there a motion?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Merkley and seconded by Dr. Fernando. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's 5-0. Number 2, the Board of Education vote for 2 candidates to serve on the Subregion 23-C CSBA Delegate Assembly. May I have a motion?
I move that the Glendora Unified School District Board of Education cast 2 votes, one for candidate Eileen Miranda Jimenez and one for candidate Christina Lucero. Happy to open it up for discussion.
Yeah, let me get a
Second.
Okay, it has been moved by Mr. Ellenson and seconded by Mrs. Reuter. Is there any discussion?
I'd be happy to share that what I know about our delegate assembly in our Region 23C from serving on it. All 4 candidates, I know them. They're all highly qualified candidates. They would all do well. I would say that candidates Eileen Miranda Jimenez from West Covina and Christina Lucero from Baldwin Park would be considered the incumbents, so to speak. done a very good job for the years that they've been on delegate assembly. I think that they have potential to be leaders of our region and the next director of the entire Region 23. I am personally recommending that we cast our 2 votes for these 2 because the thing that sets them apart from the other candidates to me is I served with both of them on the ROP school district, and they have been very proactive advocates for Glendora Unified. Just yesterday, Ms. Miranda Jimenez contacted me to ask more information about our hybrid reopening, wanting to learn from us. Ms. Lucero has done the same, and we've been very supportive of each other as a collaborative with the ROP school district, and I think they have the best interests of all school districts, not ones that just look like theirs, but ones that look different. So that's my recommendation as we cast our vote for this.
Anyone else have any comments? So, do I just,
Take a vote.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's approved 5-0. Number 3, approve the Aeromax air purification systems from Manitex Facility Solutions Incorporated proposal as presented. Mr. Weinstein.
I move that we, I got a motion
I'm
first.
sorry, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Mrs. Reuter and seconded by Mr. Ellenson. Any discussion? Mr. Weinstein.
Just real briefly, so we have upgraded all our filtration systems throughout the district. We have units on each of the buildings, proper tonnage and good ventilation in just about every school, but we are lacking in our middle schools. Those middle schools are not done by individual package units. Those schools are done by a chiller system. Chiller systems, although they are very efficient as far as utility-wise and use of energy, their filtration is not as dynamic as individual package systems. This will allow us to place a ventilation system, an air cleaner, with actually a display on the cleaner. If you see the printouts, that tells us, the rate of cleaning and how pure the air is within the classroom, so the teachers and the students can see it. And these units do well over 1,000 square foot facilities, and they can circulate the air 4 times every hour. So we recommend that we buy these and place them at our middle schools. Any questions? Okay.
All those in favor? Those opposed? You're getting your air cleaners. Thank you.
I can say for a fact that our middle school teachers will be thrilled. Our principals say that the chiller systems there have been an issue for some time, and so this is wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, number 4 here, board policy 4119.11, 4219.11, 4319.11, administrative regulations 4119.11, revisions first reading. May I have a
So
motion?
moved?
I don't know if we're just doing a first.
Are we just doing we're just doing a first reading? Okay.
We have actually approved things on a first reading. Do you not want to do that?
Sorry, we can approve it?
You can approve on a first reading. You can put that in your motion.
Let's hear the first reading, and then if we feel comfortable afterwards, someone can make a motion to skip the second reading.
So we'll listen to you.
Thank you, President.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Borg, members of the board, Dr. De Leon, distinguished guests. Dr. Kelson and myself are joint presenting because she has some board policies and administrative regulations related to the same topic of sexual harassment. The board policy and administrative regulations that I have are in the personnel section, and she has those that are in the student section.
That is correct.
And it has to do with the Title IX regulations and recent changes as of August, which have allowed us to make the appropriate changes to our current board policies, and in line with recommendations from legal counsel as well.
So we're looking at 2 different sets of amendments to existing policy. The first of which is on the personnel side. Those are the ones that Dr. DeGrazia is responsible for. And the second set are on the student side. So if you think of it in terms of the the actions and behavior of the people in Glendora Unified. Those in the 4,000s represent the staff and the expectations of them. And those in the 5,000s represent the expectations of our students. They essentially convey how we are expecting people to follow federal law and see to it that everyone has an equal chance to participate without any mistreatment.
Thank you. Board members, any questions?
I have one question. So this is discussion items 4 and 5, right?
Yes. Sorry, I didn't read 5.
That's correct.
I have a sort of a question. I did try to read through all of these policies and their revisions, but I wonder if you might be able to, I don't want to say summarize, but give us an idea of what any major changes to the policies might be.
Yeah, I'll go first. Just in regards to the first board policy 4119.11 or 4219, 4319, they're essentially the same policy. They had been separated out for certificated, classified, and management employees, but the policy applies to all the same. It applies to volunteers, interns, anybody with an employment relationship to the district. That's actually a change in the policy, the definition, and some of the definition of what sexual harassment is and what it isn't. And Title IX looks at it, and the federal government looks at it slightly different than the state does. That is the result and rationale for such a policy. The administrative regulation is the application of the board policy. And so you'll see the administrative regulation is multiple pages long, where the board policy is really ultimately one to 2 pages.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't the changes in bold when you?
We have taken the changes on these policies en masse because there were so many changes to the board policy and administrative regulation. We've accepted them as whole new policies. And I think the same goes for, yeah.
To put it into bold.
Yeah,
usually the changes are in bold
yes,
type.
Exactly. This is full acceptance of a new policy and policies as vetted by legal counsel.
Thank you. Did you have something else, Dr. Kelson?
I think Dr. DeGrazia did a really nice job of explaining the general changes as they relate to how the policy functions. What I'd like to offer is really 2 key things. Number 1, in some ways, the federal law gives districts and other entities more discretion. However, along with that discretion, they require that the entity, in this case the district, establish what they call a body of decision makers who review the impartial findings of an investigation and determine based on the policies and practices of the district how that district would like to proceed. That is a unique aspect of the new federal law and something that, as Dr. DeGrazia mentioned, is seen differently in the eyes of California than it is in the federal context. All that to say, we're very thankful for the solid legal guidance of the firm that presented this policy change for us.
Well, let me ask the board, would you like another?
I just have
week
one
or
more
2 to
quick
read?
question.
Okay,
No,
sure.
no, you mentioned the difference between the state policies and the federal. Are they in conflict with each other? Thank you. Sorry.
Just today, in an education blog that I read called The 74, they had an article about that. And the short of it is they are in harmony, but it's really up to the discretion of that body that looks at the impartial findings and makes a recommendation.
Okay, so I'll ask my question. Do you want another opportunity to look over this, or would you like to vote tonight?
I'm comfortable based on the information they gave to make a motion to
Mr. Ellenson?
waive the second reading and approve the board policy changes for action item number 4 and 5.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Yeah, oh, yes, absolutely. Now we're moving on to consent items. The Board of Education may consider agenda consent items as a whole or as individual divisions. Any item may be removed by a member of the board for discussion. Are there any items that you would like to remove and discuss, board members? May I have a motion then to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Fernando and seconded by Mrs. Merkley. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay, passes 5-0. Okay. I know. We have come to the end. We must say goodnight. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Moved by Mr. Ellenson and seconded by Dr. Fernando. All those in favor of adjournment? Aye. Those opposed?